that thing called life. We appreciate your patience this morning as we were getting things set up to bring you our innovative, ever evolving, and progressing broadcast here of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So thank you for your patience this morning. We appreciate you so very much. Like I said, inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all inside of Syracuse, New York, as well as inside of their giant behemoth of a brown stripe building on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, and on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in their drive-through location. Many ways to connect with the wonderful experience that you have when you come out and support local at Cafe Kubal. Make sure you come out and support them today. We are inside of these Cafe Kubal studios, and as you know, Witty Wicks is proudly brightening up our lives here, as I have a lot of things don't work for my allergies over the years, but I can tell you these Witty Wicks candles do, and windows wide open has been a great asset for this. So we always have the candle lit in here, and right here on and off, just right here in our world. So thanks to Witty Wicks for everything that they have done. And obviously they're doing a Christmas in July sale this week. It's all week long through Sunday. Busy as all get out in their first day, and excited to see you through the week here. I was out there for the first day, and I know that you've continued to go out and support local, and I want to thank you for that. So make sure you head out to Witty Wicks today on 190 Township Boulevard in Township 5 in Camillus, New York, and we look forward to seeing you out there. So a lot of great stuff coming up. Always appreciate you being here. Can't thank you enough for all that you do to be a part of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. And with that being said, we're very excited that this morning we get to do a wall-to-wall fantasy football coverage show. The reason why we're doing it wall-to-wall is, one, I like Mike Sofka, and two, because I love fantasy football, and three, because you've been patient, right? I was off on the road at the ACC kickoff doing interviews at this time last week, so Mike and I owe you a couple weeks, and we're bringing you a couple weeks, so we're happy to be here where sports meets that thing called life, and I have Mr. Sofka on the camera with me here right now, so very excited to be celebrating Mike here on screen with me where sports meets that thing called life. So with that being said, Mike, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Dan?
Doing very well. And Mike, we're going to jump right into it here, and we got a lot of great things to talk about, a lot of great things to discuss here where sports meets that thing called life. So very much looking forward to that. And we have the opportunity to start things off with fantasy rookie advice. So I'm going to defer to you first for fantasy quarterbacks, and we'll take this first hour through this first hour here until around 10 o'clock, a little bit after here. We'll talk about the rookies, then we'll switch gears into talking about the fantasy sleepers. So I would love to get your thoughts, and I know everybody would like to hear your thoughts on the quarterback side of things.
Well, the top two quarterbacks everyone was thinking about added his rookie class are Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. And, if you're in a redraft situation, I'm not going to tell you to draft any rookie quarterback. That would be, a big mistake. Even a great Peyton Manning threw a ton of interceptions his first year, and it's just not going to work out for you. Now, in a dynasty situation, obviously that's different. I probably look at, in a dynasty situation, I'd probably look at Kenny Pickett if I needed a starter sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to start day one. I think it's going to be Mitch Trubisky, but that's okay. But, because I think Kenny Pickett's going to get his time. He's going to get his turn. And when he does, I don't look for him to relinquish the job back to Mitch Trubisky. And then I take a look at some of the players that are around him there in Pittsburgh, and I kind of like what I see, and I like what I see in the rookies that they brought in George Pickens and Calvin Austin III.
Yeah.
You wind that up with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and Najee Harris. Kenny Pickett's kind of set up for success here, so I like Kenny Pickett the best. And everybody says, well, Malik Ryder, Malik Willis, he was the next guy up that everybody thought about, number 2 quarterback next to Kenny Pickett. Yeah. Some said above Kenny Pickett. I think the number 2 opportunity here is Desmond Ridder out of Atlanta. He could get a chance to start as well this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if Marcus Mariota is going to be able to hang on all year long, and I like what I saw from Desmond Ridder. So there's a couple guys right there off the top. Again, I in a redraft situation, I'm not drafting either one of these guys, but I could break down just about every quarterback in this draft class, but it's not going to do you any good. You're really going to want the top five here. But Kenny Pickett's your first opportunity to start, I think. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think Kenny Pickett is, he's the one, like you said, set up for success. I think that ultimately, Kenny Pickett is the one that we're going to see here. I mean, Carolina is in a unique situation, in a weird situation. And so, I don't see that, Matt Corral is going to get onto the field immediately. And I think that's going to be kind of a weird committee situation at this point. So, I wouldn't say to go there. And then, you look to some of the other places here. And I think, Malik Willis, I mean, that's the same, type of situation for me, is that he is, first and foremost, he fell down the draft board, right? And I had Kenny Pickett going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had him, being the first one coming off of here. And he was. And so, I didn't think that Malik was going to fall that far. He did. And now, I kind of look at the fact and say, okay, so what are they thinking about him for the future, and how long do they anticipate him kind of having to learn and whatnot? Desmond Ritter's my guy. I love that you brought him up, because that's my guy. And I've covered him in college for years. I've talked to him for years. Love covering Cincinnati. Love covering the American Athletic. Love talking to Desmond Ritter and to his teammates, including Sauce Gardner. So, and Alec Pierce and whatnot. There's a lot of great guys coming out of there. I think they had 9 guys drafted this year. Everybody's talking about Georgia, but let's talk about the fact that there was a bunch of guys taken all throughout the entire draft from the Cincinnati Bearcats, including in the first round. So, I agree with you that I think that Kenny Pickett is set up for success. I think that, when you have Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with those guys. I think Deontay Johnson has some room to grow, and so does Claypool. I think Claypool gives you kind of that kind of slash guy that can do a bunch of different things. I think George Pickens and Calvin Austin III. Calvin Austin, another guy that I covered in the American coming out of Memphis. So, I definitely see them as having some depth here. Keep in mind they have Miles Boykin, who came in division from the Ravens too. So there's a lot of weapons there. And you have Najee Harris, whose numbers were fantastic. And not only running the ball, but also receiving the ball. And overall numbers were just really, really great. I mean, this is a guy that can cumulatively, all-purpose, get you to what, 1,600, 1,800, maybe 2,000 yards so in a season. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think Kenny Pickett is set up for the most success. They know him well. They did this with James Conner. They work out in the same place, the Steelers and the Panthers, so they knew what they were getting in James Conner. They know what they're getting in Kenny Pickett. I think it's a great move here. I think Desmond Ridder is going to be the second guy that we'll see out there playing. I think Matt Corral, it depends on who they want to really lean on and how much time they want to give to people. And if an injury happens, which God willing it doesn't, because you never want to see anybody get hurt. And then, in outside of that with Malik Willis, I don't see it right now. And so I definitely would agree with you that I think Desmond Ridder gives some value, but that's a guy that you leave off and you wait and see. Where at Kenny Pickett, if you got a deep draft, you got to take 3 quarterbacks, not a bad third to take, grab and stash, and if you're in a deep, 14 to 16 team league and, everybody's only going to get a couple and you grab a bunch of running backs and wide receivers and you get your quarterback in the middle of the draft and you wait, and that's your second guy, well, that's not a bad guy to have to throw in for a week. So I think Kenny Pickett has the value. I think Desmond Ridder has the second highest value, so I would agree. And then I think from there, we kind of just put our arms up in the air and wait and see what happens.
Well, before the trade in Carolina, see, I thought Matt Corral was going to be the guy this year. I thought there's a chance that they just may throw it all at Matt Corral this year. They just may say, yeah, he's our guy. And, Sam Darnold, no. But now that they brought in Baker Mayfield, I think that's pretty much it right there. Now, I like Matt Corral a lot. I think he's the answer there long term. And I thought, well, even if Sam Darnold starts, he's not for long. So Matt Corral's a guy that I can look at. But I think Malik Willis offers the most upside, comparatively speaking, to where people analyze him to be right now. Like, I think they see him as a project.
Yeah.
And I believe he is a project, don't get me wrong. But if he can get himself on the field, this guy has wheels. This guy has a good sense of where he needs to be, when he needs to be there. Those are guys that can move the ball. And I like him. I like Malik Willis a lot. I just, again, in a redraft situation, I'm not drafting any rookie quarterback at all. Unless it's unless for some reason Mitch Trubisky is my starting quarterback, then I'm definitely taking Kenny Pickett because I'm not thinking that Trubisky's long for this year either. So it's going to be a very interesting year. I think any one of these guys is capable of putting up numbers. I think even a Sam Howell is capable of doing something in Washington. But again, I'm looking and they got Wentz, they got Heineke. Yeah. So I don't think any one of these guys is a threat to really from day one outside of an injury here in camp. I don't see any one of these guys being an impact player redraft wise. But again, I like the prospects of Kenny Pickett the best long term here and short term because of the surrounding cast. But Desmond Ridder, don't forget, Calvin Ridley should be back next year. So Desmond Ridder, maybe this is a kind of a year where he kind of rides through. A lot of guys do better when they don't start right away and then they trickle themselves onto the field. Maybe mid-season, maybe things aren't going the way they wanted to in Atlanta, and then he can kind of take over. I think that, with the addition of Algiers in the backfield there as well. So Atlanta is an exciting young team. The Malik Willis situation is really curious to me because he's got an excellent running game.
Yeah.
And when you have an excellent running game with a Derrick Henry, you could really rely on that. And there's not as much pressure on a Malik Willis. There's not as much pressure on him.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he doesn't have the super talented cast that Kenny Pickett does, but, he still has Robert Woods, and they did, just draft a wide receiver, and they got some solid players. So I think Tennessee's a solid team. It's just during this transition period right now. If they had a polished quarterback, they'd be better off. I'm not saying Tannehill isn't going to start. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I like Tannehill still, but gosh, Tannehill, don't let Malik Willis on the field. I don't think you're going to get back on.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too. Is that I do think Malik Willis may have some flashes, and they might have some sets put in for him, right? Because he's a dual threat quarterback. I got to see him a lot because he played up against Syracuse, came to the Dome, so I know that he brings a lot of value. I know that he definitely does, and to me, I think that he definitely could get on the field this season. I think they could make some moves for him to kind of put him into different sets. I do see him, at least right now, being like a formation guy where they could bring him in and just utilize him here and there, because why keep him off the field when he's that talented? So I don't think that it's going to be like a total wash of, okay, yeah, he's not playing this season, forget about it. I think that we will see Malik Willis, and I think there will be people that'll go back to this video and say, hey guys, why didn't you tell me to pick him up? It's consistency. And if you get team quarterback, right, if you get Tannehill and Malik Willis like you do in the Wake Up Call fantasy football leagues, that's a better bet for you, right? Because then you get them both, you can utilize them both, and when they score, you get the points for all of them. You don't have to do a dang thing. If one goes in for the other, one goes in for this, one comes out for that, you don't have to worry about it. So there's value to doing that in our fantasy football leagues because you get a team quarterback. But ultimately, do I think Malik Willis is going to make somewhat of a fantasy impact this year? Yes. Do I think it's going to be as big as he'll make in the future? Obviously, until he takes over this team, no. But Malik Willis is kind of that sleeper wild card that I think once he gets out there, like you said, I don't know if Ryan Tannehill is going to get a chance to get back. So with that being said, we're going to jump into this conversation continued when it comes to running backs, and we'll defer to Mike once again, and we'll go back and forth here on our fantasy rookie selections here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. You're inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, and this is the, not one of, not a, but the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York, the exclusive home for all of our fantasy football leagues in Central New York. If you'd like to sign up for those leagues, go to dtstays@gmail.com. That's dtstays@gmail.com. We would love to see you out there. We have had fantastic drafts, and we have some hardware that's going to be presented this year because through COVID, we have a couple of our champions and a couple of our last place toilet bowl holders that need to get their trophies. So we'll be doing some great things up here at the Wildcat Sports Pub, and of course we'll be drafting once again. So Mike, your thoughts on the fantasy rookies from the running back perspective? What is your take on who you think will make an impact here this season when it comes to our rookies of 2022-23?
Yeah, everybody's going to automatically say Brees Hall, and yeah, and I'm a Brees Hall fan as well. But keep things in perspective. Don't go out and in a redraft situation draft him abnormally high. There's still Michael Carter in the mix there with the Jets, and I think that Brees Hall is talented enough where he can get he can get his share. He can get his carries. He can get his looks in the passing game. He can get some touchdowns. He has a nose for the end zone, this guy does. So this is a guy who's kind of the 1A, 1B situation with Michael Carter to start the year. There's going to be people that aren't going to believe in this situation. There's going to be people in your redraft that are going to say, well, no, I'll take Michael Carter over Brees Hall, and that's a mistake. I think Brees Hall is going to end up to be the guy. So I think if you're in a situation to get Brees Hall, go ahead and get him. Right now, overall, running back wise, he's the number 18 running back on my board, but he's by far the number one rookie running back on the board. And then yesterday we had a big development here. We had Chris Carson released. Looks like he's going to end up retiring here. So that elevates Ken Walker to third. I think Ken Walker to third has a great opportunity. He could finish the year as the number one running back. And get this, going into next year, Ken Walker is going to be the only running back under contract. I know right now everybody's like, oh, they got a whole stable of guys there in Seattle. They got Rashad Penny, and he's technically the starter right now. But they got DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. And stop. Just relax, all right? This is going to be the Kenneth Walker show here next year. Dynasty situation. I don't need to tell you what to do, but Kenneth Walker could end up being the number one running back overall this year as far as rookies are concerned anyway.
Yeah, and like you said, with Chris Carson, I mean, God bless him and God be with him. I feel bad for his situation because of the fact that he's been hurt so much and he's had to go through so much to get onto the field, and now we see this departure, which feels like we're missing something, right? It feels unceremonious and that it's not right because we've been waiting to really get to know him and get to see him and get to enjoy him, and we haven't been able to really do that, right? And because he's had those seasons, really every season where he's a spark and then he's gone. And it's that flash in the pan, and that's a really tough thing to see. And beyond fantasy football, he's a human being, and I think as a human being, we need to respect and appreciate the fact of this decision, and obviously respect and appreciate the fact that he did give us the time that he did, and we're going to miss him. So with that being said, the fantasy rookies that I think can make an impact from the running back position, Kenneth Walker, even with Chris Carson, I had Kenneth Walker making an impact. Kenneth Walker, the third, one of the top guys when it came to overall yardage attained on the ground this past season in all of college football FBS of 130 plus schools with the Seattle Seahawks. Listen, they've been looking for a running back for a long time. I find it ironic, and I wonder how Russell Wilson feels that it's like they didn't give him a consistent back for years, and now he gets traded, and they're like, hey, let's bring in this guy who's been pretty consistent. So, it's a sad thing to do. Kenneth Walker III, I believe I covered him at Wake Forest, then he went on to Michigan State. So I do like him in Seattle. I do think he makes an impact. I do think you can wait to draft him later on, but I do think ultimately he'll become the starter. Brees Hall, this man can do everything. His statistics don't lie. He has really good stats, and just to me, he comes into this league as what some people might think is automatic. And I ask you to take a step back, because when something looks like it's going to be easy, it doesn't. If you're like, oh, okay, he's going to walk right in. Well, don't forget about the fact that last year they drafted Michael Carter, and I told you that Michael Carter was going to become the starter, and I guess I meant to Dr. Seuss that rhyme. But Michael Carter, to me, was always meant to take over that job. He was like third or fourth string, and I laughed at that. And I talked about it for weeks here in our fantasy football broadcast presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub inside a Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora here in these Cafe Kubal studios. We talked about it numerous times, and I kept saying, Michael Carter, he's going to start. He's going to be your guy. He's going to do things. And when he did get out there and he wasn't injured, he did make an impact. And so I think that, drafting Breece Hall, to me, it's a good move. And it also makes me kind of sit here and think, okay, what's the long-term hope for this? Is it to play them both? Is it to say, Michael Carter, we don't know about you, or maybe your injuries are worse than we thought, and so we're just going to be prepared for that? That is left to be seen. But I think that Breece Hall definitely brings value to the Jets, and I think he brings value to your fantasy team. Another guy is James Cook. I think James Cook by far brings value because of the fact that Devin Singletary and Zach Moss have not gotten it done. I do think that, this is going to be like we've seen in other places like Cincinnati, where you bring in, you have Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard, and then you bring in Joe Mixon, and eventually somebody fell out of that, right? And then and then two guys end up falling out of it, and it becomes Mixon show. I can see that happening with James Cook. I could see James bouncing one of the guys out and eventually bouncing them both out because he has the ability to do a lot of different things. He is the younger brother of Dalvin Cook, and I don't want to take anything away from James Cook's game. I just say that so you know that. But, a family that is obviously star-studded and coming out of Georgia, I had the opportunity to interview him. You can see that on wakeupcalldt.com. So I definitely appreciate James's time. Look forward to talking with him again. Rachaad White, I think he's another guy that makes an impact. Leonard Fournette just finally signed a multi-year deal. His first multi-year deal since his rookie deal with Jacksonville. Because remember, he signed a year to go with Tampa, won a Super Bowl, signed a year again this past season. Now he has 3 on the contract. So I do think that obviously they've seen enough from Leonard Fournette in his 2 auditions, if you want to call them that. So, drafting Rachaad White says something to me about the back and forth. But they didn't think Ronald Jones II was going to do it. I agree. And so now it's Leonard Fournette maybe passing the torch to Rachaad White. So that's a guy that you may have to leave out there. And this could be a guy to maybe stash for the future in your upcoming leagues. Dameon Pierce coming from Florida. I know Mike is a Gator. So, the Houston Texans have not had a running back in about, I know they had Lamar Miller and I know he did some things. But ultimately, in my opinion, they haven't had a running back in a really, really long time outside of Arian Foster when he had some good runs there. So Dameon Pierce, I think he definitely gives you something. But again, like a Rachaad White, I think he has a better chance of playing and getting more ample time out there. But he's a guy that I would kind of leave off until later on. And then Zamir White, he's the guy that shared the backfield with James Cook in Georgia. He's with the Raiders, and they did not get the extension for Josh Jacobs out of Alabama. So this is kind of an interesting thing here. You got an Alabama running back, you got a Georgia running back fighting for the same job like they fight for national championships. So we'll see what Zamir White will do. And then Brian Robinson Jr. in Washington, I fully anticipate that Antonio Gibson is going to continue to impress us. So I don't know how much time he'll get. Tyler Algier in Atlanta, he's got a shot because everybody in Atlanta's got a shot right now. It's like Oprah, everybody gets a car or a puppy. So, I think your best bets as far as drafting are going to be Kenneth Walker III for Seattle, Breece Hall for the Jets, and I would say James Cook for Buffalo. And then Rachaad White and Dameon Pierce are guys that I would let kind of fall a little bit down the line and maybe grab them at the end or grab them for, next season. And then Isaiah Spiller. I think Isaiah Spiller gives you something too because, Mike talks about getting long in the tooth. Austin Eckler's, I think, 62 years old at this point. So, he's a good player. I hope he plays forever. But I do think that Isaiah Spiller was brought in there to be a back where we know Austin Eckler can catch out of the backfield. I think Spiller's in there to kind of help him out between the trenches there. So I think Spiller's going to bring some potential immediate value to your fantasy team. So that's a guy that I would maybe take above Rachaad White and if I'm looking at this. So there are a bunch of running backs that I think have the value, and I think there's some good to be had by this. Mike, any further points before we take a break?
Yeah, yeah. James Cook is a guy to keep an eye out for simply because of his lineage, like you had pointed out, Dalvin Cook. It's my experience over the years that the younger brother usually is the more talented one in the long run because he's tagging along with Big Brother. He's learning from Big Brother, and he's learning at a more advanced age because he's kind of thrown in with the older guys sometimes. And I personally experienced that. I personally coached in little leagues and stuff, guys that have gone on to play Major League Baseball and NFL football and so forth. And I can personally attest to that. I've seen that situation. But where James Cook is really going to come into play is in touchdowns. And I'll tell you why. Because there's going to be a concerted effort in Buffalo to not have that quarterback there run the ball as much because they want to preserve him a little bit. Yeah, they want Josh Allen to kind of take a step back with that. And even if James Cook isn't the guy, even if it's Singletary, I don't think that's going to be the case come year's end. But even if it's Singletary or Zach Moss, James Cook probably will get those goal line carries.
Yeah.
The Rachaad White thing's interesting to me, but again, I don't think he's going to threaten Leonard Fournette simply because he's a day two running back. He was a day two running back for a reason. I'm not saying he's a bad running back. I think he's going to be great in the NFL here. Isaiah Spiller is going to get drafted in a lot of redraft leagues, but he's going to get drafted toward the end of the draft as a handcuff to Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, not quite 60, Dan, 59 and a half. No, he's 27.
Yeah.
And, Isaiah Spiller is going to be under his wing, and he's going to learn a lot. And, of course, Dameon Pierce, I like him a lot. I like this situation the most out of any guy. I think he has the most upside based on where everybody's going to think he is. I don't even know if he's going to get drafted in a lot of redraft leagues. Dameon Pierce did not have the wheels run off him in Florida. He was a part-time role player. They just reload at big programs like that. They don't rebuild, they reload. So a lot of these guys like James Cook can come out of a Georgia and these big-time schools, they can come out of these schools and they still have a lot of rubber left on the tires. Dameon Pierce can be a physical running back. Yeah, he's got some competition there, but who's really in competition with him there? Is it Rex Burkhead? I don't think that anybody's going to hold a candle to him come the end of the year. I think he's going to be a starter. Dak has it, so it's going to be a situation. But if you have the opportunity to snag Dameon Pierce late in your draft, go right ahead and do that. You pointed out Zamir White as well. I think Davis Price for the 49ers is another one to keep an eye out for. There's a tremendous drop-off at this point afterwards. Don't get me wrong, Brian Robinson rounds out the top 10, so does Tyler. But I don't see these guys as an immediate threat where you have to run out and, take one of these guys in redraft because they're rookies and they got guys in front of them who are pretty good players.
Yeah, no. And so, I think, and I think, I say what I say about Austin Eckler because there's been so much, he's been utilized so much, but he's so good at it. That's what I love. And I hope he continues to be an enigma. I hope he plays till he's 40 and just keeps finding ways to do it, and I really do appreciate all the work that he's done. Austin Eckler has been a trooper, and somehow most of the time he eludes me when it comes to the draft, and so we'll see if Eckler and I can find a way to be a part of the same family this year. And definitely looking forward to it. Mike and I are going to be drafting in August down in Florida with some amazing people. I don't want to forget anybody. I want to shout out Lisa and Trey and Eric and Rick and Jason and Mark and Stefan and Nick, and I believe I got everybody there. But I do want to say, and Brennan, I want to send all my my love down to Florida. Thank you all. Hopefully we got some big news coming up here very, very soon that I'm excited about. So some really good stuff coming up where sports meets that thing called life. And with that being said, we're going to take a step aside for a fast break. When we come back here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life, we'll continue our fantasy rookie and sleeper conversations with you here on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, on wakeupcalldt.com, on facebook.com/livenowdt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Plenty of places to connect with us, and we thank you however you're getting to us. And we will be back right after you hear from our fantastic partners in the Central and Upstate New York community. We will be here to talk about the fantasy rookie value of our wide receivers right after this.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafekubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavicoli's.com. That's myavicoli's.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York, located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway. PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox. As a patient, what do we want? To be cared for, to be listened to, and to have someone walk us through the process on our path to victory. Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics does all of those things beautifully, with Dr. Mark Petropoli leading the team on 791 West Genesee Street in Skaneateles, New York, located minutes from beautiful Skaneateles Lake. Whatever your injury may be from head to toe, preventative care, rehab, physical therapy, laser therapy, and surgery are all available at Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, where they care about us, they listen to us, and they understand that everyone's path to victory is a little bit different. Let them help you on yours by calling 315-685-7544 to make your appointment today. That's 315-685-7544. And find out more information at victorysportsmedicine.com. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, hanging out with you where sports meets that thing called life. And so happy to be here with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You're watching on YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT. And of course, you're with us on mixlr.com /WakeUpCallDT and on wakeupcalldt.com, where you're listening to worldwide internet streaming radio. So however you're connecting with us, thank you so much. Like I said, inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, Cafe Kubal hanging out with you on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, inside of their giant behemoth of a brown stripe building on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their double-decker cafe. And, of course, you can also find them at their drive-thru location on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. So, with that being said, you see that we got a bunch of stuff here. We've redone the studio, changed up the studio, and unveiled it to you here in 2022. And we have some awesome things. We have our 315 sign that is right here for you. And the 315 sign, very meaningful to me as I started my company here in my community. I came back here. I was living in Florida, came back to New York, started my company, Dan Tortora Broadcast Media, LLC. We just turned 10 years old on July 20th of 2022, and we now can celebrate our 10-year anniversary, and I celebrate the 315 all the time. So I have this in the studio, and it's very meaningful to me, and it's why I haven't changed my phone number. So no matter where I've lived, I've never changed my phone number because of my connection to my community. The 315 pillow with the dome there, and the Cuse Home Sweet Home. You can get all of these, including their awesome candles, at Witty Wicks. You can go to wittywicks.com, like Mike Sofka down in Florida or anywhere else you are around the world. Go to wittywicks.com. You will not be disappointed by these awesome scents. They have something for everybody, something for my allergies, and Windows Wide Open does the trick better than really. I mean, I've had different things that you try at home, right, for your allergies and whatnot, and these Witty Wicks candles have been really helpful. They smell awesome. They keep my studio fresh every day that I come into it, so big shout out to Witty Wicks for that. And of course, you can go celebrate their Christmas in July sale online at wittywicks.com. You can also go to 190 Township Boulevard in Township 5, right in front of Movie Tavern in Camillus, New York, and you can go to Witty Wicks there as well. So make sure that you jump over there, and we appreciate you supporting local as always. With that being said, Mike and I are hanging out here inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour. Not one of, not a, but the Fantasy Football Power Hour. And we always have a great time, proudly presented here by the Wildcat Sports Pub. And so we've had the opportunity to speak with you about fantasy rookies. We're going to continue that conversation in our wall-to-wall bonanza of fantasy football coverage here. We're starting with the rookies. We're ending with the sleepers of 2022-23. And Mike, I will send it to you for our wide receivers and your thoughts on where the wide receivers are at in this upcoming season. So I'd love to get what you think about these wide receivers.
Well, generally, I can flash back to the 90s, and I can remember playing fantasy football back then. Much different game, much different technology, much different everything. The thing that flashes to me the most is you always waited about 3 years for a wide receiver. Yeah. Then Randy Moss came in and he changed all that. And you were like, wow, you can take a rookie wide receiver. There's not a 3-year learning curve and all this. And the NFL has become more of a win now, make it happen now. I just don't see it happening at any rookie wide receiver that can help you in a redraft situation win a championship. Now, there's going to be some one-off situations. I'm going to name a few. Drake London would be that number one guy, but he doesn't have a very good quarterback right now, and I think he's a dynasty guy, has a lot of upside. Yeah, he's going to start, but he's not going to be able to outperform all these other people. He's the highest-rated rookie wide receiver on my overall wide receiver ranking, and he's number 38. So that should tell you something. You can't count on this in a in a redraft situation, okay? Garrett Wilson, that's a little bit different situation. I think he might be able to end with the best year out of all the rookies. Look, Corey Davis is on his way down, and Zach Wilson and Elijah Moore could be a 1-2 tandem, but I don't know if Zach Wilson is even the quarterback there. So Garrett Wilson offers a lot of upside there, okay? Jameson Williams, I like him a lot. Bad team, bad situation right now. So, again, not sure what's happening there. Chris Olave, I like him a lot. Yeah. And you look at Chris Olave, but then you look at the quarterback situation. What's Jameis Winston going to do? There's other guys in the same position you got to wonder. Jarvis Landry, how's he going to assimilate? You look at Michael Thomas, is he going to stay healthy? So there's some unknowns right there. I mean, there's some guys with some names. There's some guys with some credibility from the college ranks. And a Treylon Burks, a big-bodied guy, but he's not A.J. Brown. He's not that guy. You can't. It's unfair to say that he's A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Then you got Jahan Dotson. You got Sky Moore, who I think could be a Tyreek Hill. I don't know yet, though, Christian Watson I like a lot. I think he's got the tremendous ability. He's got the hops. He is a guy who, he was number one on the adjusted explosiveness index this year, and he was 0.84 away from scoring a 106. And when you score a 106 on the AEI, the adjusted explosiveness index, which I can help you with at HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com or WinningFantasyFootball.com, however you want to put it in. But Christian Watson has great upside out of North Dakota State. Aaron Rodgers has got to throw the ball to somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the guy. Maybe Christian Watson's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a bunch of guys that I would talk about here. And like you said, as a rookie, it's going to be kind of up in the air. But here's why. This season, Drake London has no matter what, Drake London has a new quarterback, right? And no matter what, Atlanta has a new quarterback. It's either going to be Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder. I think it could be a little bit of both at certain points, Desmond later. So Drake London's in a new type situation there where you're not coming in with an incumbent guy who knows this team and knows this offense and knows everything that's going on. Garrett Wilson, you have Zach Wilson, Wilson to Wilson, Wilson squared. This could be a great tandem. They could sell a lot of T-shirts. They could do a lot of cool things with the Jets. We know they're a Broadway show. They could do a law office thing of Wilson and Wilson. So we'll see where it comes from here. But Zach Wilson, like you said, is he going to be the guy? That is up in the air as well. Came in last year. Now, granted, does he have the protection? I mean, my guy Mekhi Becton's there, but the Jets didn't have the help that they needed. And when they had some weapons on offense, some people got injured, like Michael Carter. In the backfield, the wide receivers were a big question mark. I said that I think the best players on the Jets right now are their rookies. I think the Jermaine Johnson II's coming out of Florida State. I think that, Garrett Wilson coming to them from Ohio State. And I think, getting a Breece Hall to to jump in there and give you some Big 12 love. I think, to me, their best players are their drafted guys. And so, do I think that Garrett Wilson has value? Yes. Do I think he could become the number one wide receiver? Yes. But you look at teams and say, are you becoming the number one wide receiver because you're beating people out? Are you becoming the number one wide receiver because there's really nobody there that's a threat? And I think that that's the case in Atlanta. I think that right now there is no threat of a number one. I think that Kyle Pitts is their best bet right now. I'd love to see Olamide Zaccheaus, boost himself up there as he's come out of Virginia, and I got to cover him there. And then Garrett Wilson, who's going to stop Garrett Wilson with the Jets? And then, I look at Treylon Burks. Well, the guy that could have stopped him is gone, right? A.J. Brown, they got rid of him, right? And this weird, let's be cheap. We know what we get in A.J. Brown. We know he's a 1,000-yard receiver, but instead of paying him out of his rookie contract, let's just go get somebody that they're going to automatically compare to A.J. Brown. So it's weird. It's like you get a comparison to the guy that you had at a cheaper value because you don't want to pay for this guy. So then if Treylon Burks does what he's supposed to do 3 years from now, do they let him go and draft another guy early on? I mean, is that the Moneyball way that we're going to see Tennessee do this thing, is saying, let's bring in the guy, let's get the talent, let's use him for 3 years. When he asks for the money, let's send him off. We're going to give him $3 million a year. When he's worth 20, we're going to let him go. We're going to find somebody that looks like him and sounds like him. So we'll see what Treylon Burks can do, but he's a guy that could take over right away. Jamison Williams is coming off of an injury, but in Detroit, no household names. He could take off right away. Chris Olave, we know what the Saints went through last year, Mike. I think you and I got phone calls from the Saints that we were going to go out and play eventually. So I think, Olave, again, another guy coming from Ohio State, he can have an immediate impact. Sky Moore, he's a guy that, obviously I covered at Western Michigan. I know his coach very well, and Tim Lester. He is somebody that you and I both thought the Chiefs would take. We thought that they would take him in round 1. They took him in round 2, but we still had him going to that team. I thought he was end of round 1 talent when they had those back-to-back picks. So, Sky Moore for me, another guy that we could see immediately. Christian Watson, another guy out of necessity. We could see him immediately. And George Pickens can find his way, maybe not as immediately, but in a committee situation, Jahan Dotson, a committee situation with Terry McLaurin in Washington, and then Alec Pearson in Indianapolis, right? He's got open season as well. So there's a lot of guys that I believe will have an impact. There's a lot of guys I think will eventually become your number one because they have to be. A Christian Watson could be from day one. A Chris Olave could be from day one. A Treylon Burks, a Garrett Wilson, a Drake London could be from day one. So, that's where things kind of sit at right now. And that's viable, right? Because you're saying, well, Dan, I'm getting a number one guy in the depth chart. But it's also somebody that needs to get comfortable. And a lot of these guys have to get comfortable with new quarterbacks that are taking over that specific team, right? George Pickens has to do that, as well as Chris Olave has to do the committee thing there when looking at quarterbacks. Treylon Burks may see both, but we'll see Ryan Tannehill. And then you have, like we talked about, with Drake London. So I think that there is definitely value. I think that some of these guys can be called sleepers because they're coming into situations that could be immediately fruitful to them, but because they're rookies, they could drop in your draft. So I think I could argue any of these guys are sleepers. I think they can fill out your roster well, and I think you need to give them some time to get acclimated because sometimes guys transfer right away and it makes sense, and then other guys it takes a minute or two. So any further thoughts on the wide receivers?
Yeah, there's some other guys here that, may start or gain starting time right away or very near week 1 here. And of course, I'm talking about George Pickens. Now, he's had what they think are off the field character issues and so forth, but he's got talent on the field. And I'm convinced that Pittsburgh's the right organization for a guy like him because Pittsburgh seems to get guys to straighten up and fly right. I mean, look at Antonio Brown. Look at the situation that they had there with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. They kept both those guys under check. I had no idea both those guys were nutcases till they left Pittsburgh. Yeah. So George Pickens, I think they're going to get the most out of him. Alec Pierce, he had a chance to start in Indianapolis right away. So this is a guy who I look to, as well as Jalen Tolbert in Dallas. I think there's an opportunity for him to start right away. there's going to be some flash in the pan guys show up later on. David Bell, Wandell Robinson. The one guy you want to check yourself on, make sure you follow up and make sure you stay abreast, is John Mechie. Unfortunate news. He's diagnosed with cancer. He has a leukemia. He's definitely play for 2022, but he's still back dynasty wise. So obviously he's not going to help you this year, but I'm saying we've seen guys beat cancer before. So we've seen this before. We've seen a Connors situation when he was in Pittsburgh. We've seen these guys beat it and come back. He's a young guy, he's an athlete. I think he can do it. But again, I'm not investing a lot of draft capital in a redraft situation in any rookie wide receiver. But in a daily fantasy situation later on in the year, or maybe for your dynasty team, these are guys you're going to want to watch out for. And I like Tolbert, I like Pierce, I like Pickens, I like Watson, I like Moore, I like all these, not the top name guys, but guys that can get themselves up in that top name conversation.
Yeah, and obviously to John Mechie III, my prayers and my well wishes to him and his family, to everybody that's fighting that. And I'm going to say a quick one, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen, because I feel like it's important to do that. So, to John Mechie, to anybody dealing with cancer, COVID, anything going on in today's world, any type of pain whatsoever, emotionally, socially, physically, economically, mentally, whatever's going on, we do pray and hope for your healing completely and for good, and no matter what, healing through God and handling well whatever comes your way, to you and your loved ones, to John Mechie and his loved ones. May everything be okay and stay okay, and may you be completely healthy and well, and may you've just gotten started living your life. So, in Jesus' name I pray, amen. So, I think it's important to do that. I think it's important to send our love and to remember that as much as we have fun talking about all these things, it is bigger, always bigger than football, and life is precious and family above everything. As Deadpool would say, family is not an F word. So make sure you take care of that. And I do want to go back to something you said and straighten up and fly right. And I would say, cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top, Natalie Cole. So some good stuff there coming from that song. And we head to the tight ends and the rookie tight ends. There's a few guys on my list. There's not a ton. There's a few of them here. But Mike and I, we've talked about this before. You go outside of the top 4, top 5 tight ends, and it gets a little bit interesting when it comes to fantasy. Our Darren Wallers, right, from the Raiders, Mark Andrews of the Ravens, Travis Kelce of the Chiefs. There's guys that stick out, right? But George Kittle's dipped from the Niners. He trying to figure out what the heck that situation's going to be, and hopefully he can catch back on. But a lot of these teams, it's been a question mark. Dalton Schultz had a better season with Dallas, something that I was waiting for him to have, and I'm happy that he did. But not every one of these 32 teams, and I could argue, we could probably both argue that 2/3 of the NFL doesn't really get to say, hey, that's our passing guy, right? There's Kyle Pitts with the Falcons. So there's a few guys that I think could make an immediate impact, and that's because the teams that they went to are teams that desperately needed anybody to be helpful at the tight end position. And then there's another team that, I think has a tight end, but could always use another one. And that one will be clear in a couple minutes when I give my thoughts if Mike doesn't do it first. So, Mike, your thoughts on the fantasy rookie tight ends?
Oh, everybody's on Trey McBride, number one overall consensus, number one tight end in the draft here, and he goes to Arizona with Zach Ertz. I think this situation, he's going to be on the field right away. He's going to get playing time right away. He's a good blocker as well, so that's important. If you want to get on the field, you need to be a good blocker. But what he really does is catch the ball. He catches passes as well, so I think he's going to fit in nicely. I see they brought Kyler Murray under contract. There's going to be stability. Kyler Murray's still a young guy, so there's going to be time for him to grow and mature in the league and develop that partnership with Kyle Murray. Greg Dulcich, I think he has the opportunity over Albert O. I don't think Albert O is the player Dulcich is, and I think he's going to have an immediate impact. But again, he's not going to have a redraft fantasy impact, but he's going to have some on-the-field things that are going to work out for him. Jelani Woods, look, and in Indianapolis, I was sold on Kylan Granson last year. I thought he was going to have a bigger impact. He did not. Mo Alley Cox has developed himself into that starter, that ex-basketball player, but this is a situation where Jelani Woods could see the field sooner rather than later and could have an impact come year's end. There's some pundits out there that are saying he's a long shot to be the number one rookie tight end by the end of the year. And then with the announcement of Gronk not coming back, definitely staying retired, so he says, Cade Otton's an interesting playmaker out of he's in Tampa now, but they got rid of OJ Howard. So, there's a guy opposite of Cameron Braid I think can have a sooner rather than later impact as well. But again, I'm very cautious with tight ends, rookie tight ends especially. I need this, the show me stuff. You're from Missouri. You're from the show me state. I need to see what's going on first. Unfortunately, in a game of fantasy football, you can't wait too long, though. You can see what's going on, but you got to be ready to pull the trigger. You should always have a top player or two on your team that, you would trade. You should always have a top player or two that you would drop if somebody came along. The problem is a lot of us are proud in the way we draft, and we don't think we have any droppable players early. So just keep your eyes open on guys like this for later on in the year for a mid-year bye-week fill-in, a mid-year injury replacement. Track these guys, see how they're doing, because a lot of people won't have rookie tight ends on their radar for sure.
Yeah, and that's, I definitely, think, like I said before, that we're in a situation that, here we are with tight ends. We talk about it every year, and who's going to be the guy who's going to step it up? Who's going to be the one that we can lean on this team or that team? And you see people take that. There's always somebody that takes a run early. They take a big early run. They go out and grab somebody. It's like George Kittle, first round, or right into the second round, Travis Kelce. And then people start freaking out. And Mike and I always talk about this. Yes, you have to pay attention to your draft. You have to pay attention to what's going on, right? You might be doing well with wide receiver. You got 2 or 3 of them. And then you see a run of running backs. And I'm not saying change everything you're doing. But if there's, if the last 13 guys on your list are off, do you want to get your 14th guy on your list, or do you want to anticipate that? So don't freak out. When somebody drafts a defense or a kicker in the middle of the draft, Mike and I, just have a sip of our drink and go about our merry way. But when there is a situation where tight ends start to go, you have to look at kind of where you're at, right? How many running backs are out there? It's why it's good that when you have a list for yourself, and you should, and Mike and I can help you with that, going into your draft, to have a copy of something that can help you out. We'll rank our quarterbacks, we'll rank our running backs, we'll rank our wide receivers, we'll rank, tight ends and whatnot. But we're also going to overall kind of give you that. So when you see the tight ends start to go and people start freaking out, and there's 4 or 5 tight ends that just went out in the last 7 picks, we could, help you see, okay, well, these are all the running backs that are still available, and these are the tight ends. Well, I want to get a good tight end, and if I don't get one now, I might not get one of those, top 10 guys. But where are your running backs, right? Are 6 of the top 20 on your list still available? Because they're going to be more fruitful to you, and they're going to pay more dividends to you. So you have to gauge it, right? Because I think people get caught up in, I want the number 1 running back, the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 tight end. And very rarely that's going to happen unless you're in a league with a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. So when you're in a situation like that, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to miss out on getting the top tight end. Well, ask yourself the question, is the top tight end going to consistently get you numbers like this potential 3rd running back or 2nd wide receiver that you're going to go out and get? You have to be able to balance it out, because I've seen it and I see it every year. People go crazy on tight end, and I sit and I look at my sheet and I go, well, if I don't do it now, I'm probably going to get 2 guys, and neither one of them I'm going to want to be my number 1. But look at my running back room. Look at what I have going on. Look at the receivers I just got. I mean, there's a draft where I went receiver, running back, receiver, and I'm looking at that group going, okay, well, do I trust one of those 4 guys to make up for my tight end? Because chances are someone's going to go really early on Andrews, really early on Kelce, really early on Pitts, and you might not want to go that early. You might not want to go 11th overall pick on something. You might not want to go 4th overall pick. And so you have to kind of gauge it. And some of these guys might fall to you. Trey McBride might fall, right? Arizona hasn't had a tight end that was a household name. And no offense to them as people, just talking about fantasy, they haven't had a tight end that's been a household name in years. And so that needs to change, right? Greg Dulcich with the Denver Broncos, they tried a guy out. And then to get Russell Wilson, they had to shift him out of here. And Noah Fant. So, now Dulcich, he has to step up. Cade Otton, we've seen that Tampa uses both. And you don't have... I thought that O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, they would have kept O.J., let Cameron go. They both kind of took from each other. They had good moments. They sometimes had good moments together, but rarely. So now Cade Otton's going to have value. And Jelani Woods with the Indianapolis Colts, he's going to have value. So there are some guys that are going to fall to you. Jelani Woods... I think people pay attention to Cade Otton because of Tom Brady, but Dulcich, Jelani Woods, Trey McBride, these are guys that can fall, and they're gonna, at this point, be your starter. So it's not a bad one to have if you don't want to draft Travis Kelce #1 overall, and you don't want to, spend the 5th pick on Mark Andrews. I get that. Now, if somebody goes and there's guys on my list that I don't want anybody to take. And I circle those guys. But if and when that happens, you got to let go of the personal and you got to shift to the professional and say, okay, this is the guy I really wanted. I didn't get him. This is where you look at the overall scheme and say, is this the right time for me to go after my 3rd wide receiver? Or do I force myself to take a tight end right now, fully knowing that a Jelani Woods or a Trey McBride can fall to the middle or latter part of the draft because people just aren't really expecting much out of them. So just keep that in mind, that the tight end position outside of the top 5 or 6, it starts to get dicey, and you don't want to force yourself to get somebody just to be like, yeah, I got a tight end in the 3rd round when you could have done something else. With that being said, any wrap-up comments about fantasy rookies, Mike, before we take a step aside and get ready for the sleepers?
No, just remember, fantasy rookie in redraft is not a magic pill. However, there's always a rookie that wows everybody every year, at least one. And it's always good to be on that guy. So we think we've identified a few candidates, but there's a lot to happen yet. Camps are just open. We're not even in preseason game #1, so there's a lot that can happen yet. Injuries can happen. The whole complexion of this whole landscape could change. So, we'll be on top of it, but at the same time, I don't know when your draft is. I would always be cautious when I'm drafting a rookie, regardless in a redraft situation. But, maybe I'll identify one of those guys who you have to take. One of these guys this is a guy you have to take, and I'll probably have that before your draft takes place. So keep tuned to our Facebook group, Winning Fantasy Football. Go check out there. I'll list something here before the season starts here for sure.
Yeah, and Mike and I are going to get to do some pretty cool things when it comes to that. And I try to do all my drafts later. I try to bring them to the latter part of August, beginning of September. People say, well, Dan, why would you do that? Well, because of what Mike just said. Because I try to do it as late as possible so that we know who got injured in training camp and who got injured in the preseason. I try to bring us as far as we possibly can, getting as close as we possibly can to the start of the season, because that is the time where we're going to know the roster better than right now. And so we'll be following you all the way through, and we'll be helping you all the way through, and you can be sure of that. Mike and I are coming back. We're shifting gears from fantasy rookie advice to fantasy sleeper advice. So watch what happens to the screen. Oh no, fantasy rookies gone, fantasy sleepers, yes. And they're coming up right after this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. So stay locked in with us, and we look forward to talking with you out of this fast break after you hear from our fantastic partners in our community. Of course, Cafe Kubal, our studio partner, and a big-time thank you to Witty Wicks, who has helped us deck out our studio with all this Cusson 315 wonderful local products. That's the thing about Witty Wicks. Not only are their candles local, but they have many local products in their shop on 190 Township Boulevard in Township 5 in Camillus, New York. Head out there. It's right in front of Movie Tavern. definitely make your way out to see Witty Wicks. This entire week is Christmas in July, and so they have sales on a lot of different things, not just Christmas stuff. So throughout the store, they have up to 50% off on select items. So get out to Witty Wicks, as Lily and I did this week, and you can go watch her video on TikTok as well as all of our social media and see how Lily likes to not only shop on the showroom floor, but she thinks that she has the right to see all the stuff that hasn't been brought out to the floor yet because, you know, my little pup, she's definitely, she's got that diva status. So we'll talk with you after this fast break from the Cafe Kubal Studios. We appreciate you being here, hanging out where sports meets life. I love you, Lily, more than anything, and I know you're not a diva, just kidding. So we'll take a step aside, and we'll be back right after this with plenty more as we shift gears from fantasy rookie advice to fantasy sleeper advice inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
This is Jim Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have at any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, hanging out with you where sports meets that thing called life. And here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, we proudly thank you for supporting local. Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, inside of their double-decker behemoth of a brown stripe building that I call the Welcome Center to Manlius. You'll find them on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. And, of course, you'll find them on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in their drive-through location. So make sure you head out, fill your cup up right, and continue your week off right, I should say, at Cafe Kubal. So make sure you do that. We are fully inside of our Fantasy Football Power Hour, not one of, not a, but the Fantasy Football Power Hour, where you should be every single Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. But you say, Dan, you went earlier today. We did, because last week I was at the ACC kickoff, and the last couple weeks here, you didn't have your fantasy coverage because, travel and whatnot. I wanted to make sure that we brought that back to you, because we say that we're fantasy football all year long, and we are. And Mike and I put a lot of work, a lot of effort, enthusiasm in. I like giving Mike some more airtime because you got to see that beard more often. And so when it comes to rookies and sleepers, we are here today to give you advice. We just spent the whole first part of the show giving you fantasy rookie advice for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And now Mike and I will shift gears to do the same thing for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, sleeper-wise. So these could be rookies, these could be vets, these could be guys that are heading into their second season in the NFL, third season. So we'll take a look at the sleeper side of things in the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. They are open 7 days a week for indoor and outdoor seating right now because weather is fantabulous. It's in the 80s. We got a nice... See, that's the thing about Syracuse. It's when it gets hot, you're like, oh, wow, it's hot, 80, 90 like Orlando. But unlike Orlando, we typically get a breeze. So you get to enjoy the breeze, sit outside. They have a lot of different things going on. They have cornhole tournaments. They have volleyball. So you can come and watch. You can come and play. You can come and enjoy the indoor-outdoor seating at the Wildcat. And, of course, all the awesome TVs. You could draft with your fantasy football teams there and have fun with your leagues. We'll be drafting here coming up very soon. Hard to believe that we're already here. And we will definitely be going back to the Wildcat for, I think this is 6 years that we've been drafting there. So big shout out to the Wildcat Sports Pub for that. And, of course, for takeout and delivery, call 315-487-2222. You got to try the fried dough. Got to try the Wildcat sauce. Got to try those comma fries that curl with the salt and pepper. And I got to get Mike Sofka up here because him and I are all about getting good food in a good atmosphere with a whole lot of football going on. So we got to get Mike Sofka up here to enjoy some Wildcat stuff. And we're going to do that hopefully sometime soon because I'll be going down to see Mike. Hopefully we can get him up here as well and repay the favor. So looking forward to that. Shout out to the Wildcat. Let's jump into our fantasy sleeper advice. Mike, quarterback-wise around the NFL, I'll open the door to you first here. What are your thoughts on the sleepers of this year's NFL season when we look at the quarterbacks?
Well, first off, let's just establish what a sleeper is. This is somebody who's overlooked, somebody who's not highly regarded in their position. They're going to outperform where people are going to draft them. So a guy who outperforms his average draft position by the end of the year, yet he's being overlooked up until that point. And, there's a bunch of guys that you can consider, but to be a true sleeper, I think you really need to be an overlooked guy, a guy that hardly anyone's going to draft. And the one name that keeps popping up for me is Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, and I think people are going to think I'm a homer, but I don't have a real favorite team, but, Jacksonville and Tampa are both relatively close to me. It's just when I look at what he's going to be able to do maturity-wise since he's been in the league, he had a rough coaching situation the first year, and then Travis Etienne, his buddy from college who came to the team as a running back and who's a pass catcher out of the backfield, was hurt all last year. So I think this is going to be a giant step forward for Trevor Lawrence. Now, you could say, oh, it's going to be Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is going to be the sleep. Well, I don't think he's a sleeper because he's on everybody's radar. They're getting rid of Garoppolo for this guy, and they took him way high right after Garoppolo was playing well. I could even consider maybe a Derek Carr here because he's going to team up with Devontae Adams. But I think there's always that Raider fan, and Derek Carr's not one of those guys who's going to be threatened not to get drafted. You could say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers even, but don't get me started. Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame player. You can't be a sleeper if you're a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
Justin Fields, I haven't seen enough yet. Jalen Hurts, I haven't seen enough yet. Whereas I'm not confident that I can count on those guys to be a sleeper.
Yeah.
The one guy I'm going to put my name on and say I can guarantee he's going to be an excellent sleeper is Trevor Lawrence out of Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Like you said, Trey Lance, he's on people's radars. But you could say Jimmy Garoppolo. We could say Jimmy Garoppolo is a sleeper because he's highly disrespected. I mean, this man helped to aid them to the Super Bowl. Out of everybody behind Tom Brady that people have spent money on thinking, okay, this is going to be our next guy that's going to hit because he learned from Bill Belichick and he worked with Tom Brady and yada, yada, yada. And the Patriots, if they brought him in, then they know something that we don't know. Well, the only guy to translate so far is Jimmy Garoppolo. So, I mean, I think you could say Jimmy Garoppolo is a sleeper, but is he going to be on the San Francisco 49ers the whole season? That's what I don't think, and you just shook your head no. So, I think that you're rolling a giant dice with that, and like you said, I like that you said what constitutes a sleeper, right? That it's somebody that you don't think people are thinking about, but also somebody that you don't think is going to be drafted. And I would say Marcus Mariota. I would say Mariota. If he's going to start here in Atlanta and have a chance to go out there and do his thing, I think a lot of people have written him off. I think that, he's a potential fantasy sleeper here. He's a former number 2 overall pick. He does have value. I think he will eventually be ousted by Desmond Ridder. I think over the next 2 to 3 years, Desmond will take over this team. And so I think, you could put Mariota there now, but sleeper also constitutes people aren't thinking of them. People are not necessarily going to draft them, but that we think they have the talent, right? That they have I don't want to say the talent, but that they have the fantasy value, because they all have talent. It's very hard to make the NFL, but that they have the fantasy value to constitute the fact that they're going to make an impact. And I don't know if I can put Marcus Mariota firmly as a sleeper because I don't know how much of an impact he's going to make for your team, but I do think that he's somebody that people are overlooking. He kind of rides in that like weird middle ground, like Doctor Strange, and you're going in these multiverses and there's that portal. He's kind of sitting in the portal of like, is he a sleeper? Because what do I expect out of him? But I don't think anybody expects much of anything nowadays. And so that puts it there. I think Daniel Jones is a sleeper, right? There's going to be a Giants fan that's going to take somebody. But I mean, listen, he's got a bunch of talent around him. He's got Saquon back. He has no excuses. Another guy that didn't have the option exercised for his final season of his rookie contract. So, this is put up or shut up time for Daniel Jones. He does have talent. I did cover him when he was at Duke. He was trained by one of the best quarterback whisperers in David Cutcliffe, who trained the Mannings. So, I think that Daniel Jones could be in this world, but I like what you said about Trevor Lawrence, because I think of all the guys I've mentioned, I think Trevor Lawrence has this huge upside, right? And he doesn't have Urban Meyer. He doesn't have the drama. He has Doug Peterson now. And I'm excited, this being the 12th year, that, hopefully I'll be there on site on location in some capacity, that I'll actually get to, spend some time with Doug Peterson and get to know him. I've gotten to cover Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. I've gotten to talk with him and interview him in Jacksonville. And so, I really think that he'll be a guy left off the list. I think people that have drafted with me for many years will probably look at me and look at their sheet and look at me and kind of like, I'm going to mess with you, Dan. And I don't think people fully understand that it's not a homer pick. I mean, Trevor Lawrence to me is a very capable quarterback. And remember, I mean, this guy lost 7 games in his time from high school through college. So it was like 7 games in 7 years or something ridiculous. And, he's won national championships. He's won championships in high school. So, I mean, can he translate to the NFL? I think so. I think, Travis Etienne coming back as a safety blanket. I think finally, maybe having 5 guys on the line that can stay healthy and stay together that's going to be a huge element to this. I think James Robinson coming back is an element, and they've gotten rid of youth and draft picks for guys that they think that have had time and experience in the NFL can make an impact at wide receiver. And, for the first time in a very long time, they might have 2 tight ends that they can throw to. So, I think Jacksonville, and I think their defense, has gotten better, and that's going to hopefully help with Trevor Lawrence and, the maturation process. So I'm excited for this. And remember, Nick Foles, who was a Jaguar for 5 minutes, his coach was Doug Peterson, and look at what Doug did in a situation there where Philadelphia didn't necessarily have all the talent in the world, and Nick Foles was not a household name, and look at what he did with that. And now he's got he's got one of the quarterbacks in college history that was, almost completely unstoppable. So, I think Trevor Lawrence is definitely one of those guys that you could put in that world as a sleeper. I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, but I think Deshaun Watson, because I think people are going to be leery of taking him. So I think he's talented, but will they suspend him? How long will the suspension be? What are they going to do? I think this might be one of those things where somebody might grab him and stash him. In that respect, I think Davis Mills is a sleeper. I think you and I talk about him, but how many other people talk about him in Houston coming in his second year out of Stanford as a 3rd-round pick? So I think Davis Mills is definitely a sleeper. I think that he's got upside, and we've already talked about him, but I think Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny Pickett is a sleeper as well. So I do think there's quarterbacks here that we can constitute sleeper, because I think sleeper comes with people aren't thinking about them, but they have the talent, right? Because if we talk about guys that people just aren't thinking about, there's 1,000,001 players that we could talk about, but it's coupled with you're not thinking about them. They may not get drafted, but we think that they could have fantasy value that's going to be substantial enough for you to say, crap, why didn't I take that guy? And, I think that we can also, there's some other names here, and I don't know if you want to add any here, Mike, but there's names that I stayed away from. There's Jameis Winston, because I just don't want to deal with that. There's some other guys that are here, right? Teddy Bridgewater's in Miami now. Some people would put Tua on this list, but I think people are going to draft Tua. So, that kind of takes away from that. Do you have any further thoughts now that you've heard some of my piece here?
I think it's interesting that you brought up Davis Mills again, and that's definitely a guy, but they're having some injury concerns there in Houston, and they're going to run the ball a lot, and I think they're going to manage Davis Mills well. I think you mentioned Tua, and I think Tua is a guy that you could place in that way as well, because I think that the Dolphins are going to be better than people think. I think between the receiver situation they have, the running back situation they have, I think the Dolphins are going to be better than people think, and don't underestimate them. So that would be my number 2. I think Trevor Lawrence is the guy who I consider my number 1 sleeper at the quarterback position. Yeah. But I think Tua, just like there's Raider fans, there's Dolphin fans, and I get it, but I think he's underestimated. I got him at 18 on my ranking right now, right behind Trevor Lawrence. But again, I think the upside is tremendous. So if you get an opportunity, he's available late in the draft, and you don't have a backup quarterback, and you have bench room to carry a backup quarterback, by all means, that's a guy you'd consider as well, Trevor Lawrence or Tua.
Yeah, and I would even put on that list. There's one more name that I would look to on this list, and the Tua side of it, like I said, I do think people will take Tua, but I also do think that Tua has lost. I think people don't expect things out of him, and I just got asked this question.
That's a good place to be. You won't be disappointed.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you kind of you got to go in like that, right? When I go to see a Marvel movie, I have to try and have no expectations. And I had expectations of Thor, and it let me down. I had no expectations of Eternals, and the more I watch it, the more I like it. So, I think you mentioned him, but I think Derek Carr too, because I think he falls down draft boards. Some people have him as a top 20, top 15, and but I think he still falls. I think people question him. I think people worry about him, and ultimately, he has Devontae Adams, he has Darren Waller, he has Hunter Renfrow, he still has Josh Jacobs. So, I think Derek Carr might be set for a breakout year. And I think that we could get late into the draft and his name could still not be on the board. So I do agree with that one too. And I like it. And I like that the sleeper conversation allows us to branch out and really define who we think is a sleeper and how, there's different elements to it, right? It's somebody that we think might not get drafted or fall down a draft board or not be regarded as high, but that has upside. But then there's some of these rookies that, you follow your gut. I followed my gut with Fred Taylor, and I got laughed at when I drafted him, and then I had people begging for him for 2 years. So, and I think Trevor Lawrence, I think he's one of those guys. I think he's one of the guys from Jacksonville, like a Fred Taylor, where people are going to go, why would you waste the pick? And I just think it's funny how, did Trevor Lawrence really get to be Trevor Lawrence when your head coach isn't really... If your head coach can't handle his own pants, how can he handle a 53-man roster? So I don't think Urban Meyer was doing enough to keep the zipper up. And so how does he do enough to make sure you're going and checking your film? And, basically the thoughts that I had of Urban Meyer, my potential warning signs and red flags were secured by October of last year. So... did I get to interview him? Yes. Am I happy that I did? Yes. Do I feel like he was kind of aloof and not even completely there when he was in the post-game press conference? Yeah. And I wondered, is this what he thinks a head coach is supposed to be? And, here we are today. So, I'm excited to see Doug Peterson. He seems like a more positive guy, and he seems like a guy that's more excited for this opportunity. And, Urban Meyer looked like he could be there. He could be on a boat. He could play golf. So... we'll see what can happen in that respect, but I think Trevor Lawrence is a sleeper, and if he falls to me, shame on you. But let him fall to me. Running backs, Mike, who do you have for sleepers here?
Yeah, the easy name would be Breece Hall. Well, it's a rookie, so we've already covered him. So I'm going to disqualify him in this one regard here. But I like guys that, kind of fell off the radar. I tend to like guys like, let's say Elijah Mitchell. He had an off-season knee surgery. People are forgetting him. They drafted another running back in Davis Price. So this is a situation where, look, he's the fastest guy on that roster right now on as far as running backs go. So I know the coaching staff likes to work with speed there in San Francisco. So I think there's an opportunity for him to pick up right where a lot of people thought he would have left off. So I do like him.
Okay.
I don't want to be a homer again, but I like Travis Etienne. Look, a lot of people will forget about guys that are injured or didn't play at all last year. And a lot of places that put evaluations, their algorithms, have what they did last year combined with projections this year. And if you got a 0 because you didn't play, well, that's going to take you down a few notches. Don't underestimate Travis Etienne's relationship with Trevor Lawrence. He's a safety valve coming out of the backfield. The guy can catch the ball. He's like an Alvin Kamara type player. I'm just going to say it. I think he's got the best chance to be the best sleeper out there. But there's another guy that's overlooked right now, and that's Cam Akers. Well, Mike, how can he be overlooked? He's on a Super Bowl winning team. Let me explain. When you have a guy like Cam Akers, who everybody expects to be a top 5 talent, and right now I got him ranked at number 21 on my running back rankings. This is a guy who came back after the Achilles injury in 2021. It didn't look good. So you got 2 strikes against him. He didn't look good after the injury, and he had an injury that, to his lower extremity. So you got to kind of wonder. And Darrell Henderson looked pretty good when he wasn't there on that Super Bowl run. So he was able to come back, but he just didn't look quite like himself. I think he's going to take off. I think Matt Stafford's going to have a great year. That's going to bode well for Cam Akers. So 2 years ago, you would have thought I was crazy if I was saying Cam Akers is a sleeper because everybody could see that train coming. But I think Cam Akers is a sleeper to watch. Love Travis Etienne a lot. And again, Elijah Mitchell is a name to look out for.
Yeah, we got a question here, so that's why you saw me typing it in here. We have a question on YouTube, and I want to get to it before I get to some of my thoughts. We were asked to do this half PPR redraft. How would we rank Sanders, Gibson, Jacobs, and Etienne? So for those of you watching, we have a question coming in from Trey, and we appreciate the question, Trey, and we thank you for tuning into YouTube. We also thank all the people that have just subscribed to YouTube. We were a very short time ago on a youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. My goal is to get to 100 people, and we didn't just get to 100 in that time period. We are over 400 now, and we're heading toward 500 people. So my goal was to get 100 subscribers, and we shot up to 400 plus. So thank you for that. Thank you for this morning joining us on there. I do want to ask this question, though. Mike, you can answer it first, and then I'll take it. But how would we rank, and for those of you that are watching and listening all around the world, I want to, of course, I'll let you know here, Miles Sanders. And so Miles Sanders from Philadelphia, Antonio Gibson from Washington, Josh Jacobs from Las Vegas, and Travis Etienne Jr. from Jacksonville. How would we rank them 1 through 4 in a half PPR redraft? Mike, you go first.
Yeah, these guys are all relatively bunched together, so it's interesting that all these guys are brought up here. But I like Gibson the best. I got him ranked number 19 currently. We've seen what he can do with catching the ball out of the backfield. I just spoke about Travis Etienne. He's number 20 on my running back list here. So I know he can catch the ball out of the backfield. Be prepared for him to catch a lot of balls. Miles Sanders, I think there's an opportunity for him to kind of rebound there. They got a pretty good offensive line there. I think it's going to be better than last year. I like Miles Sanders. He's number 31 on my ranking there. And the last one was who? Who was the last one there?
The last one was Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think Josh Jacobs is going to be hindered a little bit with Zamir White there, so I'm not as high as him. He would be the last out of that group, so I think Josh Jacobs is the one that's in most jeopardy right now. But, those guys are all kind of bunched together here, so that's a real interesting grouping. And actually, for the record, Josh Jacobs 22 on my ranking.
Yeah, so Mike and Trey, thanks for the question. You can be sure you can pose your questions to us either live or after when you go back and watch the show. These are archived on our fantasy football tab on wakeupcalldt.com. They're also all on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, and they're on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. So if you go to the video portion of any one of these, and make sure you subscribe to us on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, like the page, facebook.com/wakeupcalldt, and of course, make sure you subscribe and like wakeupcalldt.com and bookmark it. But we will, in the fantasy football tab on wakeupcalldt.com specifically, but we have this for you. So we will answer you as best we can throughout the show. Time permitting, we will try to get to all of your questions, comments, and thoughts. So make sure you send them to us on YouTube, send it to us on Facebook, and we're on MixLR, live streaming internet radio, and we'll answer those questions as well on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. So if you're on any one of those platforms, easy to remember, mixlr.com, facebook.com, youtube.com are all /wakeupcalldt. All the same there. So make sure you write to us and we'll get to you. So Trey, thanks for the question. And Mike said in a half PPR redraft, he would have Antonio Gibson 1, Etienne 2, 3 for Miles Sanders, and 4 for Josh Jacobs, of those 4 specifically. That's not 1 through 4 of all running backs. That we were asked to rank those 4 specific guys 1 through 4. So Mike said Gibson, Etienne, Sanders, Jacobs. I would agree with Mike, and so I'm gonna write mine in here. Right now I would say Gibson is obviously number 1. He had a fantastic start yet again. Another guy from Memphis. Shout out to the Tigers and who Mike Norvell was recruiting to bring in there. But with the Washington Commanders, I have Gibson first. I do agree with that. Numbers-wise, shows it to you. I think he's a definite spark for your fantasy team. But then you have Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, and Travis Etienne. Etienne has value because he knows Trevor Lawrence. He has value because he's an effective guy. But he also is having his rookie season because he got injured last year and didn't get to play at all. I mean, he got injured right in training camp. So God willing, he stays healthy and his body stays healthy in and out of football for the rest of his life from here. Same thing I pray for everybody. So it's hard for me to put Etienne number 2 because of the fact that we don't know and because of the fact that he's coming off of injury. So I'm going to change this up a little bit. Miles Sanders gets injured too. I'm going to put Josh Jacobs as my number 2, and I'm going to do that because he is in a contract year, okay? And as we know, when guys are in contract years, Josh Jacobs put some numbers up, right? Coming out of Bama-Lama, he put some numbers up. He rolled tide those first couple seasons. And I think he's going to, he's in a place right now where he knows he's not for long in Las Vegas. So this could be a really good time for him to showcase himself. And guys in contract years in the NFL, they seemingly spark, and then some of them get that massive contract and fall back down again. You know, I'm looking at some of those guys that are out there that have done that for sure. And then there's other guys that don't, right? There's other guys that just keep it going and keep pushing and keep getting after it. So I'm going to put Josh Jacobs there because he's in that contract year and because I think he's more talented than people necessarily give him credit for. So I would say Jacobs as 2 for me. And then I would say as 3, I would say Travis Etienne because he has more of a green light. Miles Sanders is in a position right now where I think that, you know, Miles Sanders is one of those guys that has a crowded backfield in Philadelphia. Travis Etienne's coming back from injury, but so is the guy that took the job before with James Robinson. So you got 2 guys coming back from injury, so I think it's better for Etienne than it is for Miles Sanders. So I'm going to put Miles Sanders number 4, and that's how I'm going to float my boat here. So we gave you a little bit of a different look at it. We told you why, Trey. We thank you for the question. And I'll give you my running back sleepers here and my kind of take on who I think is going to be a sleeper here for the 2022-23 NFL season at running back. So there's a bunch of guys that Mike and I have already talked about in our running back coverage that we think are going to be really, really good. I like that you said Cam Akers. And I like that because he's never caught on, but he's never been fully healthy. He's been in and out. And so I think he's definitely a sleeper. I think Darrell Henderson, in the same respect, is a sleeper as well. I think the Rams have kind of open season here. So I think, you know, Darrell Henderson Jr. is a sleeper and Cam Akers is a sleeper. Neither one of them's taken the job for a full season. Neither one's been, I mean, when there's been health on Henderson's side, he didn't get the ball, right? And then, but he was dealing with Todd Gurley. So Henderson hasn't gotten to be the guy when he had the chance to be the guy. Then when both of these guys had a chance, neither one of them stayed fully healthy. I think another sleeper is Leonard Fournette. I think he's going to fall down draft boards in a lot of places because, you know, you see Rachaad White coming in. I think people have lost faith in Leonard Fournette. I think there's going to be a guy in the room that's going to look at me and smirk like with Trevor Lawrence and draft Leonard Fournette thinking that I want him really bad because he's a former Jaguar. But you remember he screwed over my Jaguars. So, you know, I have a weird relationship with Leonard Fournette. I've interviewed him. I like him. I've seen him in college. He came to the Dome with LSU. I respect him. I want him to win, but he kind of did my team dirty. So, you know, as a fantasy owner, I don't hold that against him because I want to win. But Leonard Fournette, I think, could be regarded as a sleeper. I would also, you know, kind of looking through this list, like you said, we've talked about some rookies, so I'm not going to go there. But, you know, there's other guys. I think A.J. Dillon, right? Everybody looks to Aaron Jones, but A.J. Dillon, I've been talking about him since he was at Boston College. And I talked about him as a rookie. I talked about him I've continuously, for a couple of years now, spoke about the value of A.J. Dillon. But now I'm hearing people say it. Now I'm hearing other people echo, oh, Dan, what about A.J. Dillon? Hey, this A.J. Dillon guy. Hey, we think he's going to get more carries. He's going to get more of an opportunity. I look forward to saying I told you so because it's not for me, it's for AJ. And AJ's a tremendous player, and Boston College doesn't get the credit that they deserve. So I'm really excited to see him. I mean, other guys on this that I would maybe say are sleepers now, I would say Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, look at what he's done in Kansas City, not much. So I think this is his make or break year. And I think he's in sleeper status. Sky Moore might take some stuff away from him if they're going to utilize him in a lot of different ways out of the backfield and use his speed, which I think they should. But I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because I think he's going to fall down draft boards. I think people lost faith in him, like a Josh Jacobs. And so I think you can put him in that world. I think, you know, there's some other guys that are in a place where I think they could be in that road, but I still think they're going to get drafted. I think James Robinson's there in Jacksonville because a healthy Travis Etienne, it's amazing how a healthy Travis Etienne, people are like, James Robinson's not a 1,000-yard back. Wow, he's worthless. Who cares about him? It's like the moment they heard Travis was coming back, everybody forgot about James Robinson. So I think that, listen, he has the experience. He did a lot with less. He was successful when the team overall was not. So I think that he has it. I think that, you know, Kenneth Gainwell, if if Miles Sanders gets hurt again, which I hope he doesn't, I think Gainwell in Philadelphia becomes a guy in a crowded backfield that may get some love here. We talked about Tyler Algier, so I won't go there. We talked about him as a rookie. I think, there's a couple of rookies here that we've talked about that I won't mention again since we already mentioned them. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys on this list that I can regard as sleepers as I look at it. And, I think another guy that might be a deep sleeper, and I say a deep sleeper because I think he's either going to benefit this team and your fantasy team, or he's going to be in such a deep sleep that he's just not going to wake up. And I think that's Mike Davis in Baltimore. So I think, that's a guy to look at. And I think Miami's arguably got a bunch of them, right? Because they're still trying to figure out what the heck they're going to be. So, and then I think Haskins in Tennessee, right? Because they have Derrick Henry. But, how much is Haskins going to get? And is he going to get ample time? So I think this list could be really, I think it's really deep. And the more I look at the running back list and the sleepers that I just mentioned to you and Mike mentioned, the more excited I get to draft. Because if you're like Mike and I, when you look at this, some people get confused and overwhelmed. Mike and I get really psyched about it. I love drafting with Mike every year. We go down to Hooters in Orlando. I drive. And I love drafting with Mike because Wildcat has everything up here in Central New York, and then Hooters is our Florida. And for those of you that pay attention to Wake Up Call, and I thank you, our first, our home of the show is in the state of New York. We go worldwide, internationally, but the hub is New York, and the second home is the great state of Florida. So when we're at Hooters, I don't know if Mike notices this, and I'm going to say it now because I really want to have more fun with it this year. But I'll look at him as the draft is going on. I'll look at Mike, and I'll look at the board. I'll look at my list. I'll look back at Mike because we do so many of these. We do the show together every week. Mike and I get excited later in the draft because if you're like Mike and I, we're kind of like the Bill Belichick. We love drafting all the way through, and we know the guys that are going to go the first, 4 or 5, whatever rounds. But when we get in around 9, 11, 15, 18, that's where I think, and Mike, you can speak for this yourself, but that's where I think I get most excited because it's where the guys that you and I have talked about for months are sitting there. And I'm always wondering, is Mike going to go where I'm going to go? Is he thinking what I'm thinking? And there was a time last year where there was 2 or 3 guys that if Mike went one, I went the other. So I don't know if that's a fair statement, but I feel like you and I get really energized for the latter part of the draft when we start living in this sleeper world and we go back to it and we both know what each other said, which I think makes life really interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. You could win your whole league at your draft if you draft well. In those middle rounds, some people start to take more chances. Oh, I'll take this guy. He's from my favorite college team. Oh, I like this guy. He's on my favorite NFL team. Without regards to what that's going to do with your fantasy implications week to week. You have to address this game. You have to break it down to the smallest increment, and that's week by week. Yeah. If you don't win in week 1, you better win in week 2. You got to set yourself up for success to win that way through your draft. It's interesting to me. Did you want me to go on to wide receivers, Dan, or no?
Yeah, you can if you we're going to jump there next. So absolutely. Actually, You know what? So make the point you're going to make, and then we'll take our final step aside, and then we'll do wide receivers.
Sure. Don't worry. I just think, again, if you do your homework, if you do things right, you can win your league with your draft in the mid rounds because that's where the men are separated from the boys. The women are separated from the girls. The champions are separated from the chaff. I mean, you got to set yourself apart. You're going to take some chances here. You're in the mid rounds. You're going to draft a rookie or two. You're going to draft guys that are going to be your wide receiver 5 that by the end of the year, they're going to be your wide receiver. They're going to be somebody else's or could be somebody else's wide receiver 1. It always amuses me because of the system I have for drafting. A lot of people would want to trade with me during the year. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can have player A that you want for my team, but I need this player on your team.
Yeah.
Well, that's no fair because that's your number 3 receiver and that's my number 1 running back. Well, I know, but this number 3 receiver, when he goes to your team, he's going to be your number 1 receiver. I just had the forethought to get him in a position ahead of you in the draft. So you got to think in those situations as well. Does your league trade a lot? If your league trades a lot, this is maybe where you want to snatch up some trade bait. But you can't count on trades to win your league. You got to count on the draft, and you got to count on your ability to adjust week to week. So the draft is monumental, and hopefully, with the aid of some of these sleepers here, and hopefully following along with us here on Winning Fantasy Football, we'll get you to that point. I'm just excited. I'm ready to draft now, Dan. Let's draft now.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing that we do, right? Is that we do our mock drafts, and those are going to be coming up soon. We do like a mock draft 1.0, a 2.0, and so we start to really dive into that. And I think that's going to be, obviously our next step here as we get closer and closer. Remember, believe it or not, that today is July 27th. So we're going to be in August next week, and as we're in August next week, we're going to have just a couple weeks before you and I are drafting together. So, I think the mock draft is definitely time to get rocking and rolling with that. So make sure you stay close to us, facebook.com, youtube.com, mixlr.com, all /WakeUpCallDT. The Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, comes to you every Wednesday exclusively on Wake Up Call from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And today we did wall to wall to give you some expanded coverage, starting part 1 with the rookies and part 2 here with the sleepers. We're going to cover the wide receivers and the tight end sleepers after this final fast break on this episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Very excited about everything that is to come. Thank you to everybody that's connecting with us. For those of you on Facebook, go to Winning Fantasy Football. All you got to do is go to Facebook, type in that search bar Winning Fantasy Football, click join, and you are with us all the time. These videos are there. You have the archive. You have everything you need. You have all of our thoughts. You have our jokes. And we definitely enjoy the time that we have. And you have that awesome logo that Mike put together for us. So make sure you head off to Winning Fantasy Football. And while we're on this fast break, why don't you do it right now? We'll be back on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Kubal Studios right after this, as Mike and I will look to light the candle of your fantasy team and see if we can find a flame for you to brighten up what's coming for wide receivers and tight ends right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. Every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time and beyond. We'll be back after this fast break and excited to wrap up today's show with our sleepers at wide receiver and tight end.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafekubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
This is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the Whole Frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, you can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus, where you will find handcrafted all-natural soy wax candles over 60 cents to freshen up your home. We carry a wide range of locally made items, Salsa Q's, Syracuse Salt, and Chocolate Pizza Company, to name a few. Let our knowledgeable staff help choose unique gifts and keepsakes for any occasion. Gifts for family and friends, and maybe a little something for yourself. Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Hope you're having yourselves a fantastic morning this morning and a great week. If you're not, we're trying to make it better. If you are, we are trying to make it better, because that's what we do, right? We continue to push toward the positive. So happy to see you, happy to be here with you, and thank you so much for being a part of the show. Inside of these Cafe Kubal studios, Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 401 South Salina Street, 324 West Water Street, all in Syracuse, New York. We started this week off at 324 West Water Street with Clay Gagan Sherman, the head coach of the Bryan and Stratton Bobcats of Syracuse for men's basketball. Big ups to them for their signing day that has happened this week, and I will have exclusive coverage of that coming up on all of our social media right after the show, so don't miss out on that. Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call_DT. So a lot of cool stuff coming up here. Very excited to be sharing that with you. And a big shout out to our exclusive multimedia marketing partnership with Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse. Like I said, Cafe Kubal, we have been at multiple locations. You can also go out to where we have been before on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their double-decker cafe. You can't miss it. Giant brown building. As you're coming in, I call it the Welcome Center of Manlius. All roads converge to Cafe Kubal, so make sure you go out there and see them there. And on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse in their drive-through location. So big shout out to that. If you're like Mike and you're out of state, well, you can go to cafekubal.com. That's KUBAL.com, and you can have the coffee sent right to you. The studios here, the Cafe Kubal studios, are decked out in a lot of different things. We add and bring things in and out and do different pieces. A lot of cool stuff. So there's some stuff that's going to be coming that's going to be behind me that you haven't seen before. We'll be bringing some of that really cool stuff in here. And of course, we have our awesome 315 sign, Q sign, and our 315 Syracuse pillow with the dome in there. All of these signs and pillows are not only made locally, but they are all at Witty Wicks. You can go to wittywicks.com, and you can also go to their Christmas in July sale, up to 50% off select merchandise, including their Christmas merchandise. So make sure you head out there today to pick up your candles, your Christmas stuff. Never too early to get Christmas gifts. I've learned that over the years. The older I get, the more I'm like, I'm going to get Christmas gifts in February. So make sure that you head out to Witty Wicks all throughout the week, and especially this week now through Sunday for their Christmas in July sale, up to 50% off on select items, 190 Township Boulevard in Township 5 in Camillus, New York. So make sure you head out there today. And of course, you can also shop online and get some of these great deals at wittywicks.com. So with that being said, Mike and I are talking about fantasy football sleepers, and we have wide receivers and tight ends to go here. So Mr. Sofka will carry us through by starting us off here inside of the Fantasy Football Power Hour with our wide receiver conversation for fantasy sleepers, thanks to the Wildcat on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Literally about maybe a minute from Witty Wicks. Witty Wicks is, there's a bridge. You get off at Hinsdale Road, and on this side of the underpass, you have Witty Wicks, and on this side, you have the Wildcat Sports Pub. Hit them both, support local, and show some love. 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Indoor and outdoor seating, takeout and delivery at 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat. So we look forward to having you out at both, and I look forward to hearing what Mike has to say about the wide receivers. Go ahead, sir. Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com and the Winning Fantasy Football Group. The man with a plan, the beard that knows no length, and the beard that will one day find its way from Orlando to Syracuse. I believe that just like Rapunzel's hair, eventually we can utilize Mike Sofka's beard as a bridge that will unite worlds potentially. With that being said, Mike, your wide receiver thoughts.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys here that I would consider as sleepers. One of them jumps right off the page, and that's Rondale Moore. You know, with the addition of Marquise Hollywood Brown, that's going to open things up. Now, Hollywood Brown's going to get a lot more opportunities, but I think with DeAndre Hopkins serving a 6-game suspension, Moore should start out really well and keep that production up. You know, AJ Green isn't a guy to consider be a threat to him. So I think everything points to up with Rondale Moore. Then I look at some other guys like a Jalen Tolbert we talked about before, could see immediate playing time on the field. You know, Alec Pierce in Indianapolis. But let's look at a name that's more common, Jerry Jeudy. He had an off year. He was injured. And, you know, with the addition at the quarterback there, Russell Wilson, I think that's going to bode well for him. I think Jerry Jeudy can have a year. Some people are going to kind of forget about him as well with the injuries, and some of the algorithms out there really put a lot into last year's performance as well as this next year's production. So he could be undervalued on people's cheat sheets or whatever they're following there. So I think those guys are. I think Gabe Davis. He's a prove himself type of situation. They're bringing in another wide receiver right behind him, and Gabe Davis. I think he's got the hops. I think he's a red zone guy. I think he can be a target for you, especially in a touchdown only league.
Yeah.
And then I kind of look at other guys who not so much. These are like the second tier sleeper guys. I like Darnell Mooney. Somebody's got to catch the ball in Chicago. I think it's going to be him. And Amon-Ra St. Brown. This could be a guy that could be the guy in Detroit. What am I saying? With Jared Goff there, quarterback. What I'm saying is, even at the lowliest teams, even in teams that you don't think are very good, they still have some players that can contribute fantasy value to you. Amon-Ra St. Brown might be your 5th receiver, but he might be number 1 on Detroit and overlooked by the casual fan. So keep some things like that in mind as we're evaluating players and as we're updating and upgrading these lists with sleepers and rookies, and rankings are updated all the time. So there's a lot to happen, though, before the season. And we could consider some other guys coming up here. A Christian Kirk. I mean, why not consider him? This is a worthy receiver. Comes from Arizona. Jumps in the slot here with Trevor Lawrence, who I said was a rookie and a sleeper to watch out for. So there's a lot of names. This is exciting. I like the sleeper receiver situation because there's a lot of guys at play here.
Yeah, you know, and I would agree. You know, I think you mentioned a lot of great names there, and I think, you know, there's guys that I look at. I look at Marquise Hollywood Brown, right? Because he's going to Arizona. What's that going to look like with Kyler Murray? You know, people think, oh, okay, well, he's leaving Lamar Jackson who can't throw the ball, and he's going to go to a guy that can throw the ball. And I would say what Lamar Jackson said when he threw 5 touchdown passes as a rookie, pretty good for a running back. So, you know, Marquise, for me to go over there and to give it a shot with Kyler, who also runs around, you know, I think that is a sleeper situation, because I think people look at his name and they think, oh, okay, he left Lamar for a better quarterback. You know, is that necessarily going to shake out? I think Kyler and Lamar definitely have a lot of value in fantasy. I think they obviously can use their legs and their arm. And for Marquise Hollywood Brown, I think he's a question mark for me. Gabe Davis, I think, you know, I mean, drafted up here in Central New York. I don't know if he's going to be a sleeper, because I think a lot of people are going to get after him. And a lot of people like to kind of rub my elbow and say, go Bills. But, I think that Gabe Davis is a guy that's been inconsistent to people, that they might be leery of taking him. I like your Jerry Jeudy thought. I think Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are both sleepers because they're obviously staying healthy. Jeudy has stayed healthy more than Sutton, but both of these guys are relatively young. This is a rebirth of the Denver Broncos offense, and it could pay off dividends for both of them. And, I mean, with Russell Wilson and what Russell Wilson can do, people want to write off Russell Wilson. I mean, this is a championship caliber guy, obviously, and, you want to write off a guy that I think could, let's say he stays healthy. What does he play? Maybe he plays another 5 years. Let's not write off Russell Wilson into the sunset. He may be just getting started in certain respects. So I think that both Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton could be regarded as sleepers because they've dipped, and I've seen them dip in drafts. I've seen people kind of maybe even snicker if you drafted one of these guys before this upcoming season. So I think there's something about that. I think Darnell Mooney, has he ever gotten the respect in Chicago, right? He's coming out of Tulane. I cover Tulane in the American. I'm happy for Mooney. He is the number one guy right now because on the depth chart he has to be. Now let's see if he can earn it. So I think that's there. I think, Allen Robinson with the Rams is a sleeper. Dan, he played at Penn State. Dan, he was a draft pick that was reputable. Dan, look at everything he's done. Dan, he played with all these different quarterbacks in Chicago, and his numbers were still good. And I would say back to you, Jacksonville had their best season without him. So, you could say Dan all you want, but who's he behind? Cooper Kupp. So, Allen Robinson, could they have two number one guys? Yeah. Could Allen Robinson underwhelm like he has before? Yeah. So I think it puts him right in that sleeper range. He has the talent, but which way is he going to go? So I think that's definitely there. Mike, you brought up Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't trust anybody in Detroit, and that's just from facts. But facts are a thing that people don't care about in today's America. But I seem to care about him. I want Amon-Ra St. Brown to do well. All jokes aside, Detroit doesn't have the household name yet. I think it automatically becomes Jameson Williams, but somebody's got to help him. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I do agree with you on that. I think Juju Smith-Schuster in Kansas City, right? When Antonio Brown was let go finally from that drama queen status with the Steelers, and we found out that Antonio Brown was the problem, as you mentioned before, and my best to him because anybody who dyes their mustache blonde is someone that I think maybe should talk to someone who is a professional and figure it out. But, I mean, all jokes aside, I do get concerned about Antonio Brown's mental, because there's things that have gone on, and I just want him to take care of himself. And I know that, we care about mental health nowadays, but we should have cared a long time ago. When Mike and I were kids, we were told, butch up, get over it, knock it off, don't act like that. That was the response from people, and that's not the proper response. So I do hope Antonio Brown gets better and gets healthy. But, I said it. As soon as he was gone, I said, Juju's the number one guy, but I don't think he is. I said, I think he's a number two guy who needs a guy who commands a bigger response. So I think Juju functions well when there's a number one guy that can take some of the emphasis off of him. What is he going to be when he's the number one guy? Well, Mike, we saw that the last couple of years. He hasn't been the number one guy. He hasn't been much of anything. Now he's in Kansas City. Their number one guy, Tyreek Hill, is gone. So what's Juju going to do here? Is he going to be able to have a better status with Travis Kelce now being there? So, and is Travis Kelce the number one is he the number one wide receiver at tight end? So I think Juju is a definite sleeper. I think people are going to shy away from him. I think they're going to let him fall down the draft chart here. And I also would say this, and I know it's crazy to some people to hear this, but we've talked about the quarterback situation, and you can go back and watch that video. We do all 32 quarterback situations in one broadcast of the Fantasy Football Power Hour on Wake Up Call, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub. There's two guys that I could argue are top 10 wide receivers, and I think Mike can too. But now they literally don't have much of anybody throwing to them. And that's Tyler Lockett. And, you look at Tyler and DK Metcalf. They're both sleepers to me now because somebody has to throw them the ball. and I don't trust anybody there to do it. So, I mean, unless Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are going to throw each other the ball, I don't know how that's going to work out. So this is literally a role, like to me, this is literally a seasonal reversal of and how crazy is this? It all has to do with the same quarterback. Russell Wilson goes from Seattle to Denver, and I think we literally go upside Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, downside DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. So Russell Wilson has literally, in fantasy value, flipped two guys up and flipped the other two guys down, and they're all talented. So I think, Russell Wilson has had a direct effect on your fantasy football, and I think people are going to draft Lockett and DK Metcalf looking at their numbers last year, forgetting the fact that they don't have Russell Wilson anymore. And then, I think some other pieces here. There's some rookies we talked about, so I'll stay away from it. I agree with you about Christian Kirk. Paid him a lot of money. Paid him like he's DeAndre Hopkins, but he hasn't been. So what's that going to look like? I think Michael Gallup is a sleeper. He has talent, but is he on his last leg in Dallas? Maybe this year, maybe next year. So I think that's another piece of it. And, I'm looking up and down this list, and as you kind of alluded to, Mike, there's so many that we could talk about, and a lot of these guys are rookies. And I think another guy that's a sleeper that I think did some good things last year and nobody paid attention because of the team he was on is Marvin Jones Jr. I think Marvin Jones can give you some fantasy depth, and I don't think anybody talks about him besides me. So there's a long list, and if you have anything to add to it, feel free to do so. But I'm looking at it right now, and I'll echo your sentiments. I am more than excited to say that I think this is a very deep season in fantasy for wide receivers, and even if you miss in a couple places, you can still make up for it somewhere else.
Yeah, if you're careful with what you're selecting, absolutely. There's two guys that are second-year players that I want to focus on here in a sleeper regard because, again, these are guys, one guy had underwhelming stats just because of the situation and him being a rookie and only getting on the field so much, and that's Nico Collins of Houston. Yeah. Nico Collins has a great opportunity now because they drafted him out of Michigan 3rd round. Then they go and they draft John Mechie this year. Now, John Mechie has the setback with the leukemia diagnosis. Nico Collins steps right back up. And I think he's going to be able to build off that production and that relationship that he started with Davis Mills last year. So I think Nico Collins could be a surprise guy that's going to be on nobody's radar. He could very well fill in as your number 5 receiver. And then he could turn around and be a wide receiver 2 for much of the year. And that's great value for you. You outsmarted the system there. The other guy that I'm real excited about, well, I'm kind of leaning his way because I'm a Gator fan. He's a Gator. Kadarius Toney. This guy is just electric. They need to figure out a way to get him the ball in space. The problem is he's on the Giants. The other problem is he was hurt a lot last year. And the third problem is they tried to trade him after last year and this year. So I don't know what the situation was there, but I do know that they have offensive line woes in the Giants. They have a quarterback situation they're not sure of. But you know what? They're probably going to be behind in games, which means they're going to have to throw the ball. And Kadarius Toney is a playmaker. This is a guy, if they can figure out, again, how to get him the ball in space, he's going to do some wonderful things. Not going to be high on anybody's radar. People that were Gator fans last year drafted him in drafts, and it turned out to not pan out due to injury and so forth. So he's off the radar now, I think, for a lot of people. So look at Kadarius Toney and Nico Collins, those guys that they're going to go, oh, yeah, that guy. And everybody's going to wish they took him when you did.
Well, and I think it's funny that, even the Giants are kind of like, Kadarius who? They drafted him and allegedly were trying to trade him already. Giants, understand something. You are not good enough to be trading the guys that you don't know what you have yet. If you don't know the value of it, the Giants literally were like, they jumped into the stock market. They bought the stock on Tuesday and they tried to sell it Wednesday morning. That's what it felt like. Wait on Kadarius Toney, knock it off, and give him some time. There's a couple other guys that I'm looking at right now too. And another Jacksonville guy, I know I mentioned 2 of them, but Laviska Shenault. I mean, if they can get the offense going and that offensive line can stay healthy, and Travis Etienne's there as a safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence, and James Robinson's doing his thing, then Laviska Shenault, this is a guy who's talented, who has something to offer this team, and he's young. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body. that's another guy in Jacksonville that if Trevor Lawrence can get comfortable, could do some real damage to the fantasy teams that you're playing up against. So I would circle him as well. And, I think another guy that I honestly don't get, I call him Hands McGee. I talked to you about how this guy's got Velcro on his hands and the ball must have Velcro all over it. It's Hunter Renfrow. I watched him play in college. I watched him play in Orlando at the Camping World Bowl. I covered him there. He's the reason why Deshaun Watson came back and beat Justin Fuente in his first year as the head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies. That championship that Clemson had, who knows if they would have even made the college football playoff, been selected for it, if they had lost that game. And that game was not all Deshaun Watson. It was Deion Kane and Hunter Renfrow. Renfrow is a guy that people continue to forget. I've talked about him forever and a day. Mike was getting on him too. We're both talking about him the last couple of years. People still don't care. I think Hunter Renfrow, and I understand Devontae Adams is there, but possession receivers in PPR leagues are very important. And I think Hunter Renfrow flies under the radar. And I think Alan Lazard does too. And he's a guy who Aaron Rodgers has publicly said that he likes. So, I think both of those guys are guys that you forget about in the NFC. And if you forget about them, I'll have no problem putting them on my roster, because if you know that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw Lazard's way, and you know that Derek Carr can trust in Hunter Renfrow for a first down, why are you not talking about these guys? So I would be remiss if I didn't. And I would also say Brandon Ayuk out of San Francisco. If Trey Lance is going to be the guy, what's his relationship going to be like with this young receiver? Because it's open season in San Francisco, and nobody has the job outright at running back. Nobody has the job outright at wide receiver. And nobody clearly 100% has the job at quarterback either. So it's all open in San Francisco, and we'll see what happens there. Let's just hope that the San Francisco 49ers rise higher than the gas prices in the state of California. So with that being said, Mike, we'll head off to our tight end side of things, and I'll let you have first crack at it at our fantasy sleeper tight ends of 2022-23.
Well, a couple guys come to mind, and one that comes to mind right off is Logan Thomas from the Washington Commanders. This is a guy who's bouncing back after an ACL injury, a 10-month timeline, but that would put him, a 10-month timeline would put him at week 4, but he's ahead of that recovery right now, so he could be in the conversation week 1. So normally I would tell you not to even bother drafting this guy and wait and hold, but should things continue to progress on this positive timeline, this is a guy that you're going to want to consider taking late in your draft, the Logan Thomas. Right now I have him at 26 on a tight end, but I think he's got a lot of upside, and Carson Wentz has been known to target the tight ends really well. Think of his time in Philadelphia. I know last year Mo Alley-Cox kind of let him down. Jack Doyle, they didn't do anything. So that's the counter argument there. But I do like what he has to offer. I like what a Brevin Jordan has to offer now as well in Houston with a Davis Mills. But another guy who jumps off the page to me is Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram with the Jaguars. This is a guy who has the physical attributes. He can get it done. He can catch a lot of passes. Well, he kind of doesn't stay healthy, and he kind of drops a lot of passes too. So there's a touch and go there situation. Another guy I like is Cole Kmet. They're going to concentrate on being more effective in the red zone in Chicago, and that's going to dial right up for Cole Kmet. So I think that's going to be an excellent find for you, Cole Kmet. I would say Evan Ingram, if he can stop the drops and stay healthy, he would hands down be the guy. But I like Logan Thomas, and I also like Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I think, and I like what you brought up there. And so I would say, there's other guys here that could make sense. I do like the ones that you mentioned. I would say when we're talking about fantasy sleepers at tight end, I think Dalton Schultz, he had a better year in Dallas, and I think some people will be high on him. I think some people still would put Dallas Goedert above him in Philadelphia. So I think he lives there. I think Dawson Knox lives in this world of sleeper, right? He did some good things. He started off last season strong, but they brought in O.J. Howard, and I think some people are going to focus on that. They're going to say, well, obviously they brought in Howard for a reason, and they're going to look to O.J. Howard to be the guy in Buffalo, and they're going to forget about Dawson Knox and what Dawson Knox has already done. I think another guy is Pat Freiermuth. I think Pat Freiermuth in Pittsburgh, I said if I bought a jersey for the Steelers, there's 2 jerseys I would buy. and they both have to do with Jacksonville. I would buy a Miles Jack jersey because I interviewed him and he was a Jaguar and I like him and I don't know why the heck they let him go. It's another stupid move by the Jaguars, and there's plenty of them. And, prove me wrong. Look at their record. So they are my favorite team, but I am an impartial broadcaster, and I'm looking at the guys that they let go, and I'm looking at how they've fallen, and I do the same thing with the Toronto Raptors. So I would say number one, Miles Jack. Well, I shouldn't say number one. I mean, these guys are on the same wavelength to me, but I would get a Miles Jack jersey because they should have never let him go, and I would get a Pat Freiermuth jersey because they should have drafted him. I think Freiermuth is going to be a great tight end for years to come. I think he is undervalued. I love that I was able to pick him up in multiple leagues in the middle of the season last year. So let me do it again, folks, and I'll have no problem doing that. So I like Freiermuth. I think he's another one that's on my list. There's some guys I wouldn't touch with the 10-foot pole. Noah Fant because of where he is. Robert Tonyan because of just the ineffectiveness of the Packers. Really, Aaron Rodgers looking to the tight end in the end zone. Irv Smith, I'm leery of that in Minnesota. And, David Njoku, he's still in Cleveland, right? He was on the trade block, off the trade block, on the trade block. Austin Hooper's bounced around. There's some danger zone guys that I'm just saying no to. And, outside of that, I mean, I think those are the guys I'd probably circle. At tight end, maybe CJ Uzomah, but I don't trust Zach Wilson enough. So I'd probably leave him off with the Jets there. And we've talked about some of the rookie guys that I would have brought up if not in this situation. I will tell you that my guy that I love, and I won an XFL fantasy championship. Where's my trophy? So my XFL championship, right? The 1 year of that iteration of the XFL, and I got to borrow this from the Penn and Trophy Center here in central and upstate New York. But Donald Parham Jr. with the Chargers, listen, there's a reason why they brought him in from the XFL. There's a reason why they kept him, and there's a reason why he's still on the roster. This man has had longevity. There's a reason for that. So I do think he's a deep dive, but still, he's somebody to watch as the season progresses. You may not necessarily draft him, but you need to necessarily watch him. So I think the tight ends have there's definitely some good around here, and there's some guys that I'm just like, oh, Michael, no. So just no. But yeah, so we have some fun with this, and that's the tight end look at it. So we have run you through the gamut here on the show in this wall-to-wall Fantasy Football Power Hour, the Fantasy Football Power Hour, typically every Wednesday from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, presented to you exclusively by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Indoor and outdoor seating 7 days a week. The best fried dough you're going to find in Central New York, and I'm from here. So if I say that to you, we take care of our fried dough, and I'm telling you it's the best. And that's some big words, and I'm sure people are probably going to want to fight me on that, but let's duke it out, baby, because I believe in the fried dough at the Wildcat sauce, the boneless wings, just so many different things that they have. The Kama fries, their sandwiches, a lot of good stuff. The chicken Caesar wrap, you can't go wrong. Their pizza's good. So many great things at the Wildcat. You can order takeout and delivery, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Call 315-487-2222. That's 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat. Listen, you can't miss. If you're going to draft on site, go to the Wildcat. If you're going to draft at home, at your buddy's house, ladies are getting together to draft, whatever it may be, make sure you order from the Wildcat and support local here in Central and Upstate New York. I can't wait to draft there with all of our Central New York leagues. And as always, Mike, I thank you. We gave you our fantasy rookies at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Then we jumped into all those positions at sleeper. This is a jam-packed 2-hour bonanza. If this was a Marvel movie, it would definitely jump to one of the top 5 all time, in my opinion, because there's so much information and it's so good. And this was so much better than Thor: Love and Thunder. So with that being said, to my Thor, to my Odin son, he's got the beard to prove it and the guns to back it up. Mr. Mike Sofka of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. Both of us of the Winning Fantasy Football Group on Facebook. As always, Mike, I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you, Dan. I look forward to next time.
Sounds good. So with that being said, Mr. Mike Sofka hanging out with us where sports meets that thing called life, and we always appreciate having Mike here on the show. So we want to thank him for being a part of this, and we'll talk with him very soon. So for all of you here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, we want to thank you for joining us for this very special fantasy jam-packed episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, giving you the rookies of the fantasy world in part 1 that we believe you should look at drafting, and our fantasy sleepers in part 2. And in order for both rookies and sleepers, we went quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. So make sure you check it out. We'll break down these videos and add them to YouTube as well. And you'll have the full version on YouTube and Facebook on youtube.com and facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. You'll also have it on our Wake Up Call DT Fantasy Football tab. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in every Monday through Friday on mixlr.com, facebook.com, and youtube.com, all /wakeupcalldt. And of course, for being with us on facebook.com /live-now-dt and on wakeupcalldt.com's home page. So thank you for that every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And once the shows go live, they jump into the archive, and you're able to find us on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, MixLR, Player FM, Podbean, Podvine, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube. All you have to do on any one of these outlets, including others, is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. Your Amazon and Google devices will also be happy to play for you the latest episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. All you have to do is ask nicely. So make sure that you do that today. Thank you to our Central and Upstate New York partners and beyond: Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Witty Wicks, PB&J's Lunchbox, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, which is also sold at Witty Wicks, and on 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York, and their food trucks all over the place, and they'll be at the fair, and you can apply for a job on Indeed.com to work with them at the fair, and you can go to maandpazpopcorn.com and get it from anywhere in the world. And we thank Avicoli's, where we were last night for our Liverpool Leadership Lounge. Go back and watch that on facebook.com and youtube.com, both /wakeupcalldt. Canine Campground Dog Boarding, thank you for all you do with Lily. Millhouse Market, Honda City of Liverpool, Pizza Man, Chick-fil-A Cicerone, Chick-fil-A Clay, Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, and Mother's Cupboard. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is also the proud exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Lemoyne College Dolphins. It is Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. Make sure you're checking out the Dolphins on Wednesdays, and we'll be back at it next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time with Bob Beretta for AD and DT. Every first and third Wednesday of each month, we have AD and DT with Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora, tackling the topics that are pertinent to the times for Lemoyne College. We were the exclusive first interview when it came to realignment and reclassification that Lemoyne is looking at, and we've given multiple exclusive extensions of that conversation and updates on that conversation. You can check all that out by going to our Lemoyne tab on wakeupcalldt.com and subscribing to youtube.com /wakeupcalldt. You can also go to both of those channels and be with us every second and fourth Wednesday live for our Dolphin Dive episodes with student athletes, coaches, administration, as well as future Dolphins and alumni. For more information on your Dolphins, go to LeMoyneDolphins.com. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is also the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Marywood University Pacers. It is Pacer Pride every month all throughout the year, and I am a proud alum of Marywood University. You can check out your Pacers on Fridays around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, exclusively here with our segments entitled Pacer Pride, because that's what it's all about. And student athletes, coaches, and administration who join us throughout the year to give you specials that you can find on our Marywood tab on wakeupcalldt.com, which you can bookmark. And of course, you can subscribe for all of our Marywood content on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. And if you want to be the first to see it, join us Fridays weekly around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on our many channels, mixlr.com, youtube.com, and facebook.com/wakeupcalldt. For more information on your Pacers, go to marywoodpacers.com. Love that music. Want to let it play all the time. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Bryant and Stratton Bobcats of Syracuse. The Bobcats are here monthly with Bobcat Buzz. We just had one on Monday with Clay Gagan Sherman live on site on location at Cafe Kubal, right down the road from Bryant and Stratton College, probably about 5 or 6 minutes away, and that being on 324 West Water Street for the Cafe Kubal location in Syracuse. And in Bryant and Stratton College's Syracuse main campus is right there on James Street up the road in Syracuse, New York. Bobcat Buzz is going to come to you today as we celebrate our signees, and you'll have exclusive photos of those signees for the men's basketball team, and you'll also have an exclusive interview coming up here on our social media with the Bobcat Buzz. You can check out our Bobcat Buzz library by going to the BSCSYR tab on wakeupcalldt.com. And you can subscribe for all of our Bobcat content by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. For more information on your Bobcats, of course, you can always go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. With all of that being stated here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I want to thank you so much for joining today's broadcast. Can't thank you enough for being a part of the show every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time inside of these beautiful Cafe Kubal studios. So I want to thank you again. I want to thank my fantastic guest, Mike Sofka. Join us on the Winning Fantasy Football group. All you have to do is go to Facebook, search Winning Fantasy Football, click join, and you'll be with us 24/7. You can also find Mike on HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com and WinningFantasyFootball.com will send you to the same place. Thanks to Cafe Kubal on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, and 401 South Salina Street for being our proud studio partner exclusively, and on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, as well as on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse in their drive-thru. Decking out the studios as we have done with Witty Wicks, it has been an honor and a privilege to showcase Witty Wicks here in our studios with their awesome locally made and locally represented pillows, our Cuse Home Sweet Home. 315 Syracuse with a new dome there, our 315 signs. They also have signs for Camillus and Watertown and so many places. They have a Born and Raised in New York sign or pillow as well that I just saw that came in. And of course, they have their beautiful, wonderful smelling candles. Thankfully, these candles have helped me with my allergies. Windows Wide Open is my current favorite, but I also have Summer and Cuse. I have a coffee one and a bunch of them here. So I'm a big fan of Witty Wicks. Have loved their candles for many, many years. When Aubrey, the owner, was making them out of her home before she even had a store, I was loving Witty Wicks back then. So shout out to everything they've done over the years and the amazing scents and aromas and local flavor that they brought. Make sure you go to their Christmas in July sale that's going on right now through Sunday this week on site at 190 Township Boulevard in Camillus, New York, in Township 5, right off of the Hinsdale Road exit. And, of course, down the road from the Wildcat Sports Pub, as well as West Genesee High School that we do a lot of work with. And, of course, you can also find them and get their sale online at wittywicks.com for those of you that are in your home and for those of you that are outside of the area. So make sure you support Witty Wicks. Thanks to everyone. Big shout out to our studio partner, Cafe Kubal. Thanks to Mike Sofka. Thanks to you. And above all things, thanks be to God. God bless, no stress, do your best. We'll be back tomorrow morning with plenty to come here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Stay safe, stay well, and have yourself a fantastic week. For myself and